you doing here? You must leave this place at once. They'll rush in and beat you to a pulp. You'll end up just like me. What made you go and do a thing like that? My mum was a seamstress, and that sewing kit was all I had to remember her by. I always wanted to be just like sweet old mum. Then I suppose I can't just curl up and die, can I?
All right, welcome in, everyone. Hello. It's Bushy and I today. What's poppin', Bushy? How you doing today, sir?
Oh, I am doing great, Domo. I am so excited for this final match, and I'm even more excited that I get the honor of casting it with you.
Yeah, same, man. I'm glad to have you. Glad to have you on board with me today. And today, it being the finals, man, which is going to be Catalyst versus NPT. As we can see here, well, Bushy, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Wait, you Houdini'd on me, dude. Hold on.
I'm going back to the black void.
I got
just
you.
like Yojo.
Hold on. No, I got you. There we go. We fixed it. No worries. All right. But with that being said, though, yeah, dude. So looking at the records here, Catalyst 6-1, and then NPT 4-1-2. Then winning the semifinals, moving into the finals here. One heck of a matchup, man. What are your thoughts going to be on this?
If you listen to the post interview that I had with Tom last weekend,
Yeah,
I said I believe this is the true finals because these two are the most practiced by far. It's genuinely not even close. They have all of the early game squares timed out exactly. They know how long it takes. They know the synergy between those early game squares. The levels to which these two have gone is insane. It's absolutely insane. And yeah. I hope that I can do my best to try to just explain that and make that clear to the audience today.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I realized that, I think like 2 or 3 weeks in when NPT was like, oh yeah, by the way, so it takes me about 5 minutes to get to Godric's Great Rune, which means it's going to take them 5 minutes. So I got time. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I didn't think about that far before. So that is definitely something that is a bit above my level of playing on Bingo, which I think is fantastic, coming up with new strategies, but also thinking of, or going the extra mile of knowing exactly how much time you have because you know how long it takes, I think is a very powerful move. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see what they both bring to the table. You know, I know a lot of players, especially in Season 1, there were things where they would practice in private and wouldn't even do in practice matches to see if they maybe have any new strategies to show us in the finals, too, today.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I actually asked both of them if they had held on to any sort of secret tech for the finals, and both of them had the exact same answer. They said, nope, I just do all my practice on stream, which granted, the amount that they stream is insane.
Yeah.
Actually combing through and finding every single strat that your opponent is doing when both Tom and Kata have been streaming 4, 6, 8 hours a day, literally just practicing bingo. Like it's not reasonable, you know, but that goes to show beyond just the execution, which we already knew. They had amazing execution. They were the best executors going into this season. Speedrunner background, it helps them out immensely with that. But another skill set that comes with that speedrunner background is this absolutely asinine ability to practice. I don't know how else to put it. They practice so damn much, and even though they aren't actually hiding anything, I don't know how the other player would even necessarily need to know those strats, because again, both of them are practicing so much, but there's so much to go through. I don't know how you would actually find any sort of hidden strats if they were trying to hide strats in their streams.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think honestly the only way you would be able to is if you literally played every single board in existence and found very, very like niche synergies. We're like, okay, if I go like in reverse in this scenario of these two different squares, maybe I find like a really, really short shortcut that I could use in a match, maybe at some point, if that even ever happens. But most of it, yeah, it seems like the strategies have been very public and like common knowledge, I would say. And it mostly just comes down to, for the most part, mind gaming and getting into your opponent's head and kind of understanding the board to where you can kind of play around and kind of not give away information. Like, I tried pulling some things off versus Catalyst in practice matches that I thought would work, and then he's still kind of like a step ahead of me. We had a thing where there were 3 squares that really like pushed Stormveil. I was like, okay, I know he's going for this. There was like Margit parries into like Godric Great Rune, and then also doing a Remembrance boss with Claws, Fists, or Daggers only. I'm like, okay, you know what? He is going to go for that Margit parry. He's going to beat me to it. I'm going to just not go for a shield. I'm not going to go for Stormwind. I'm going to just actually kill Margit straight out, skip that square, so I have the Remembrance in my pocket. So whenever he does mark that, I can go straight for that square and block that right away. He didn't even go for it. He's like, yeah, I knew that line was good, so I went for the opposite square block instead. So even if you did go for those 3, I already blocked that bingo, so I don't even have to worry about that combination. I'm like, okay, dude. Like that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? They're always like kind of like thinking ahead. It drives me insane.
To be fair, the practice matches have a little bit of an asterisk on them, because I've seen both of these players intentionally make bad decisions for the sake of practicing those bad situations that they might end up in.
Yeah. That's a fair point. I think that's actually like a good practice anyways, is being like, you know what if I do make this bad choice? How does that turn the board against me? You know, if I do make this, what does the enemy player do on top of that? That way I can react accordingly when that actually happens in an actual live match, and just maybe kind of work from behind instead. You know, sometimes being behind allows you to see the board in a different light. I think we brought that up, a couple of weeks before in other matches where, yeah, maybe you're behind on squares, but you're not giving away information on top of that. And how do you play with having extra information in your pocket compared to the enemy player who has more squares, but also is giving away where they are on the board or where they are, in the world at the moment? So yeah, that's just a lot of knowledge pretty much coming into play here is pretty much is key. So that's gonna be really fun.
And I had Kata answer a question in a very interesting way. I asked him, what exactly are you working on going into the finals? And I didn't expect this. He said, I am looking for the second best play in every single circumstance. And that's what he was practicing, because as we know, he's had so much time being ahead by miles in the entire round robin. Yeah. He has not been pushed very far at all. The one time he was pushed pretty far, Tom beat him in round robin. However, he hasn't Kata hasn't had a whole lot of practice playing from behind. And so he said, I need to practice finding that counterplay and finding the second best move on the board, expecting that the opponent might be ahead in some sort of circumstance, saying, okay, where do I go if my opponent has priority on whatever the best idea is? And how do I maintain my composure and actually get that counterplay that I need to get back into this game?
Yeah. And we'll probably see that today, because I do feel like these are two very fast players. I do think one thing that NPT has over Catalyst is having a lot of no-hit practice. So he might be a little bit more comfortable with, that Remembrance hitless square, which is a little bit of a niche square anyways, but just having a bit more of not just speed, but also kind of playing in a way where you don't get hit as much will help, especially if you start with a starting class that only has, I think we saw last week, like 6 vigor, which is not a lot of health. That's, you get hit twice by anything and you're dead. So having that prior experience, I think, will help him out today as well. And we'll see if it, dominates the board.
No, I definitely agree. The no-hit skill set transfers over very well for the early game, where you don't have a whole lot of health, but more importantly, you don't have a whole lot of damage, and you need to play in a conservative manner. You're not able to go for trades and things like that because you simply don't have the resources to do it.
Yeah.
However, I do have to mention both of these players. Their execution is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I would be hard pressed to point out any sort of major difference between how well either of these players are able to complete squares.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And it kind of hurts when you practice sometimes with these players, and I for me anyways, like I will practice and I'll do the best I can, and then having the post match interview or post match conversation, and then Catalyst, for example, being like, yeah, I was just waiting. I don't know what was going on, so I was just kind of prepping and doing things. And I'm like, I'm stressing over here. I'm like, you're waiting? What are you doing? Like, you're stressing me out. Like, it's crazy. Like how fast they are that they can just react as soon as something on the board happens. They're like, okay, this happened. All right, I know exactly what I'm gonna do. Bop, 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 bop. This is my to-do list. I already had that in the back of my head. I just was waiting for a cue. They're acting like this is like a theater piece and just waiting for their line to pop up, and then like, oh yeah, I know exactly what to do. So yeah, it's going to be crazy to see the speed, but also the way they build their map presence, which graces they pick specific graces, to kind of pivot back from, because they know, oh, this grace is like in the center of the map or center of the region of Limgrave. So I know exactly to go to this one. This one's the fastest way to here. This one's the fastest way to over there. So seeing them maneuver around is going to be really, really fun. I think.
One thing that's going to be different about this matchup compared to every other bingo matchup we've had so far, I promise you, everything that gets done is done for a reason. Both of these players are so particular, especially about their early game where execution matters more. They are so particular about what graces they light, which route they take, which squares they target, obviously, and how they develop the map in a way that's most optimal. And I promise there's not going to be execution mistakes, at least in the early game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's go ahead and move over to that match screen here, see if both players are ready. They both are currently on their character select screens. Looks like starting class for Vagabond is going to be the Eclipse Shodel, and I can't tell what the other one is, but probably nothing useful.
Definitely not useful. I've never seen that weapon in my life.
Definitely not. Yeah, definitely not super useful here. But we should start here anytime soon. I'm going to wait for that AOK from Glance here, and then we'll move into the match. I do have the board currently blacked out for anyone that is wondering, like, hey, Dom, where's the board? Nobody says waiting for a match. I picked a board. I shuffled through a bunch of them, and I'm going to be handpicking the boards today because I want just overall a nice variety of squares that have really cool center squares. So I think you guys will like the board. I will like the board. I know Bushy will like the board, but we'll see if the players will like the board because it's gonna be interesting. That's all I can really tell you. So this is gonna be very, very fun. Let's just see here. Is Glance ready and good to go? He's currently talking to the players here. Okay, it looks like that we're about to start here. He does have the players in their correct voice calls. 3, 2, 1, let's go. All right, and here we go. We're going to start the match for the players. Countdown of 3 minutes And for chat, here we go. The board is going to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Moog, Lord of Blood, as our center square. You know, I've dreamed of this day, and I've made it happen. So, we have a lot of stuff going on here, chat. You know what? I'm very excited. We've got Moog in the center square. We've got Dectus. We've got Moog Sewers. We have Godfrey. We've got Falling Star Beast. We've got a lot of nice stuff to see exactly what's going to happen. How do these players deal with this board, you know, with a lot of late game going on? We have Altus bosses. We've got Morgoth's Great Rune. Spirit Ash +4, which is going to play into possibly the Watchdog and Altus anyways. But how are they going to maneuver around this board? I think this is like a very unique board because it's not very early rushable. It's a lot of mid to late game.
As I'm sure you're aware of, Domo, the strategy that I've seen every single player take so far is to put the stars on their early game squares here. And for me, when I look at this, I see Torrent on kill a boss while on Torrent the whole time, Falling Star Beast, Magma Worm, Tunnels, Precipices, Godric's Great Rune, acquiring Dectus Medallion, as well as the Watchdogs. Now, when I did ask the players what their favorite squares to complete were, Catalyst did mention to me that he was a big fan of rushing Falling Star Beast. The reason for that being, you get a Somber 5 just outside of that cave. You get a Somber 4 within the cave. You get the Bell Bearing for the Somber 1 and 2. And from killing the boss, you get a Somber 6. And that's all by itself. Now, combine that with the synergy of Tunnels and Precipices, and that's starting to look like a really compelling option. Combine that with the Magma Worm boss, which is also in a tunnel, and that's starting to look like a whole bunch of synergy, especially when both of these are threatening on 2 different bingo lines. You know, they're not completely scattered around doing nothing as far as threats go. They're actually working together.
Combine that, to be honest, also with the Dectus Square, you know, because if you're going to be going to Falling Star Beast, you're ready in Celia. Do Celia Town Skip, you can already get the first half, get Radigan Sorceal on top of that. So, yeah, there's already quite a few like early synergies here, I agree with, that they'll probably both eyeball. And I do wonder if one of them already is going to be like, okay, I know they're going to go for that. Because you know as a player that if something is too obvious, you don't go for it, you just get rid of it. That's like the strategy. It's like, okay, this is too easy. This is too obvious. I'm not going to go for it because it's going to be contested. So I'm just going to get rid of it and block it as much as I can. That way we're both on the same playing field.
Yeah, that's absolutely a valid choice, especially when you're concerned about racing. And I can guarantee you both of these guys know how fast their opponents are. And when I talked to Tom about this, he said he's a little bit scared about it. And when I talked to Kata about it, he said, I trust in my ability. I will opt into those races and I will do my best to win them. He's coming in a little bit cockier than Tom.
I think. Spicy, yeah. I like that. I like that. And here we go. Match starting. Both of them starting with the same class here. The the Ivory Sickle and I think the Banished Knight Sword, which is not a bad weapon because it's got Uppercut on it, which I think is a great Ash of War, by the way. I think Uppercut is kind of underutilized, especially for NPC fights.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a huge fan.
Not a fan?
It does do a lot of poise damage, not stance damage, poise damage, where you can do some crazy things like stagger Tree Sentinel out of his attacks, which is completely wild. However, I'm just not a huge fan of the damage to time ratio.
That's fair. No, I think that's fair. I think it's nice for fights, like NPC fights, but also like duelist fights. Renala, you can just flop her like a fish the whole time with Upward Cut. It's nice to have if the board allows it. In this case, the board doesn't really push, that weapon too much. But, it's a good starting option. That's kind of what they're looking for, to see, okay, what can I use for the beginning? And honestly, against Falling Star Beast, it might not be the worst weapon if they are going to rush that boss.
I will admit I haven't tested it on Falling Star Beast, and there's a solid chance that it just staggers Falling Star Beast out of his attacks. And if it does, fair enough. Well played on these guys' part. I'm sure they've tested it, and I'm sure they know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Yeah, although there's like, how much testing can you do to prep for bingo? Testing every single weapon at the beginning of the game. I don't know. That's a lot of testing. I don't think they went that far necessarily, but they probably like pickpocketed some here, like, okay, I'll try this one, I'll try that one, see how it goes. But every single starting weapon, I don't know. That seems like a little too much.
I certainly don't know about every single starting weapon, but I do bet that they probably tested at least every starting class or starting type of weapon.
Yeah.
Great swords, curved swords, whatever it may be, and then try to use that information to extrapolate to the other types of weapons as well.
Which is also weird because, like, some weapons, even though they're in that same class, they have a different moveset. You know, like the McKellen Knight's Sword, for example. I hate that charged R2. The stupid stance upwards, and it just holds it there for like a full second and then comes down. Like, those are the unique weapon movements that I just try to avoid as much as possible.
I think the most obvious example of that is the Halberd moveset, where you have Dragon Halberd, which is kind of a meta weapon in Bingo here. However, all of the players hate the charged R2. Anyone that's played with the Dragon Halberd knows that charged R2 is terrible. However, you go over to the Golden Halberd, and even though it's not as strong as the Dragon Halberd, the fact that it has a much better charged R2 is what makes it actually usable.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Both of them pretty much in sync here, by the way. Talking to Melina at the first grace. Agil Lake North next to Bach. As we said, these are one of the graces that they pick because this is a central grace to Limgrave. This is the one that gives you the most access to everything. You can get to Saints Bridge very quickly here. You can get to Agil if you need to Bach. And it looks like that, okay, MPT is going to be going for that kill a boss on Torrent. And Kata might be going straight to Falling Star Beast. So this is actually
this
something...
might be a little bit of that timidity that we heard from Tom, where he said, I'm not sure I'm always going to opt into those races. I'm not sure I'm always going to try to race Kata towards the best idea in the early game, because that is where it's most likely that you're going to be sniping or getting sniped, is right in the early game, because everything is so close. It's hard to make any sort of strategic difference that early on. And as I said a little bit earlier, Tom was feeling a little bit more timid about opting into those races, which I really don't blame him for. I'm not a huge fan of opting into races. I don't like losing games in the opening couple minutes. However, Kata being a little bit more confident, going immediately for the best idea on the board.
Oh, man, a little freeze there from MPT. But look at the damage from that Banished Knight's sword. Actually, not bad at all. Oh, but MPT does get smacked off of his horse here. That is not good. A little bit of a time sink, but luckily it's not contested here. Very nice ladder skip here from Catalyst, getting through that tunnel, going straight for that Somber 4. That's going to be on the wall. Kick that ladder maybe, just for safety, just in case. You don't have a lot of health here against Falling Star Beast. But already looking very, very good here. Going to be grabbing that Grace, I'm assuming, as well. And maybe grab the Rot Grease first. That way he can use that against the Falling Star Beast for a little bit of bonus damage. That might help just to kind of secure that fight, because you don't have a lot of damage, obviously, in this case. So that just seems a little bit like a safer option.
And Kata could come up with a little bit of a different idea here, where he might go for something like Dectus Medallion to try to telegraph priority on the Falling Star Beast, which that does seem to be what he's doing here. I'm thinking Kata's rationale here is more so along the lines of, well, first off, he just got information, seeing that Tom is not contesting this idea. But I imagine Kata's idea here is, okay, let's give up Falling Star Beast, but instead get full Dectus Medallion. That way I get more progress towards Altis faster than Tom. And thereby losing a little bit right now, but gaining more in the future.
And as you see here, very nice Celia Town skip here from Catalyst. I would honestly expect no one but Kata to have a very flawless Celia Town skip. He does do this in a lot of his speedruns anyways. So seeing it being pulled off flawlessly is always, a nice treat, to be honest.
And same thing with Tom.
Yeah.
I've always said throughout this entire season, I do not like going for skips, especially if they're late in the game. There's no point in going for a skip that's going to save you 15 seconds if you made a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes worth of strategic mistakes earlier. You might as well fix those instead of fixing the skips. Both of these players, they don't subscribe to that philosophy. They say, I go for every skip, every time, always. And for the most part, it works out for them. They're very, very good at executing these very difficult to do skips.
Speech Incarnate. And let's see here. So after getting that first square on the board for NPT, what is he going to go for next here? Grabbing the Physic Flask and possibly moving to that Magma Worm. Maybe he's like being aggressive towards column 2, grabbing the Magma Worm here and Kaled as an option, or go straight for that Dectus half here at Fort Height. He's kind of like in between both options. That might be something that he's considering. And he is going over the window here. I think straight to Kaled. He's going for that Magma Worm. I think it's not a bad choice.
He's probably going to pick up the Sacred Blade right here since there is Deathbirds on this board.
Okay.
That Sacred Blade is absolutely clutch for Deathbirds. It does something ridiculous, like double or triple damage against Deathbirds. It's insane.
Yeah. No, it's I think honestly crucial if you're going to be doing Deathbirds, if you're going to be doing Cemetery Shades, if you're going to be doing Tibia Mariners, any of those 3 boss types, you want Sacred Blade. It's going to be very, very useful. For sure.
I absolutely agree. And Deathbirds are the most important of those. They have the biggest weakness to Holy. But as you said, those several other bosses that do end up on squares that also have a weakness to Holy. And it does look like Tom is developing towards that Magma Worm. This is a little bit of a slower route, I think. However, it has the benefit of getting the Physic, as well as Tom might be trying to be a little bit reactive here. Kata knows what Tom was doing for the first 5 minutes of the game. However, Tom doesn't know what Kata has been doing. And so he might just be developing the map and waiting to see what Kata is going to tell him that he was doing, so that Tom minimizes the amount of time that he wastes on squares that Kata claims.
Yeah. And it looks like he's going for... Okay, he's going across here. Is he grabbing actually Dectus from this side of the... I guess that makes sense. It's a bit of a longer way, but you're going to be jumping over that crack there. Go over to the other side to Dragon Burrow to be grabbing Dectus and Radigan potentially.
This also gets a little bit more map presence if there was something like Radon's Great Rune, but I'm not seeing Radon's Great Rune.
Yeah, I don't either.
Maybe like Ritual Pots, but that's also not here.
This might be a little bit of a, I wouldn't say necessarily a misplay, but just a little bit of a longer routing. But having that grace maybe just is something he was looking for. Or maybe just he thought that, pivoting back towards Third Church of America and then taking the teleporter from Goronk is just as long. But it looks like he's actually going for this merchant here. Is there something that we are missing?
I'm sure I'm missing something here, but I just don't know what it is. As I said, I don't expect either of these players to be making any sort of colossal routing mistake. Like that this early on into the game. They're simply too good for that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out exactly what does he think. Is he thinking of going for the Bellbearing Hunter Cheeser just for money, a fast 50,000?
Perhaps that maybe for the 30-inch square that could make sense.
Okay, so he's just maybe prepping to have the money just in case he needs it. Yeah, he's making it nighttime here, so he's going to go for that Bellbearing Hunter cheese. Very interesting. And Kata here about to get the other half of the deck is going to be marking that square in just a moment. That's going to be 1 for 1 then.
Yep, and that's going to tell Tom, well, first off, that's going to make that column 2 less valuable, making that Magma Worm a little bit of a less valuable square now.
Yeah.
And it's also going to tell Tom what Kata has been doing for the first 10 minutes of this game.
And here we go straight back to Sleia Crystal Tunnel here for Kata, going straight for that Falling Star Beast, while we have NPT going for that Bellbearing Hunter cheese. As people that are tuning in have never seen this before, you can aggro the Bellbearing Hunter and have him walk towards this tree, because that's the last time he saw you. So a lot of enemies will walk towards the direction that they saw you the last time. He'll jump up there to make some noise so that the Bellbearing Hunter goes to that rock, and then that lovely golem down there.
That jump is actually to aggro the golem. It's
not
to...
the golem, my bad.
Yep.
And there we go. And riposte him. And as soon as the Bellbearing Hunter tries to stand up, he slides off the rock. Good old grease on there, and there he goes.
A very, very consistent cheese, but it is a little bit particular. You have to jump at exactly the right time, and you have to stand behind the Bellbearing Hunter, like pretty much on his back right hip, in order for the golem's arrow to actually hit him. But it's very consistent. As soon as you know how to do those very particular parts of it, it's very consistent.
And yeah, here we have it. Straight into that 30 intelligence. Grabs that second square here for NPT. 2-1 right now. And might be going for that Falling Star Beast now. But it might be a little too... Maybe it's just covering ground going for that Magma Worm still. Even though it got blocked with that Dectus square.
both of these players always seem to have a sixth sense. They know when their opponent is going for a square that they really want. Because I promise, Tom would really prefer to get the Falling Star B square right now. That would be so much better for him.
Yeah.
However, Tom seems to know that Kata just doesn't, or is currently going for that Falling Star B square, probably because Tom knows and understands that Falling Star Beast idea is probably the best idea remaining on the board.
Kata got to be a little bit careful here. Only had about 5 health left. That's what we're talking about with, starting with low health on these boss fights is you have to make sure that you just don't get hit, especially versus Falling Star Beast, because there are quite a few attacks that will one-shot him at this health. Nice stagger here, though. Should get a repose here as well, I hope. There we go.
And this is something that I think can get a little bit lost on this side of the games. What these players are doing is so difficult. Fighting these bosses at this level with this damage, it's not easy. And it's just the culmination of so much practice from both of these two to have it down in such a consistent fashion with a complete bunch of random weapons. Like, have you ever used these weapons, Domo? I'm not sure I've ever used these weapons before.
I have used this one. If you do like a randomizer deathless all bosses or randomizer hitless, you will bump into some of these weapons. So I have, just not in the context of, hey, I only have 10 health and this weapon, which is definitely a way different setting than having 30 health and being able to wield this weapon. So it's definitely a way different mentality of being like, okay, I have a decent damage output, but I also have to make sure that I just don't die at any point in time.
Yeah. And the fact that we get to sit here and expect both of these two to actually get these squares, these very difficult. Well, speaking of which, Tom,
2 for
Tom
2
is not
currently.
getting the square right there, but it goes to show this is not easy to do.
Yeah.
These tasks are difficult, and the fact that they can pull them off so consistently is crazy.
I agree. I would, however, if I were MPT here, by the way, I would actually go for Alexander. Why not? You have Upward Cut. Might as well grab that Jar Shard real quick. Do a little bit of bonus damage. That might help you out for some of these fights. But, I think he should be fine here. As long as he gets some of those punishes.
I do think Tom will figure it out.
Yeah.
Something that Tom has had a little bit of an issue with in the past, and something that I picked up on when I was playing him in the semifinals, is nerves. He does not have as steeled nerves as Catalyst does. And if you're able to win the early game against Tom, it is not uncommon for him to get a little bit panicked and a little bit nervous and to play a little bit worse. So he might be feeling a little bit of the pressure, but I would fully expect game 2, game 3, if we get there, that Tom figures it out, gets his nerves more calmed down, and not have these execution mistakes that we've seen from him so far.
Yeah, no, I would agree though, but I've definitely been there myself. Sometimes you just get flustered when you have a plan in mind, and all of a sudden you just see your whole plan kind of vanish on the board, and the other player just taking the squares that you've been planning for. You kind of you start freaking out a little bit, and I completely get that. I've definitely been there quite a few times. So especially now in a setting where it's the finals, that's even more pressure than just a practice match. It's not just for fun in this case. This is definitely way more at stake here.
And I can even advocate just to the point that first couple games of Bingo Brawlers that I played, I was having such a good time, so confident and calm in all of my practice matches. Play against Aggie in the first match, and I am nervous. I can't do anything. I don't know how to play, man.
Yeah. There we go. Another square here, though, for MPT. Very nice Magma Worm fight. 3-2 right now on the board. And it looks like that Kata is going to be going for that 2-tunnel square. Going for the Stone Digger Troll here. Almost dead. Needs just one more stagger. You know what's funny, by the way, on these trolls is that they do have a weak spot on their head. That if you shoot either a consumable or an arrow, they micro-stagger. And you can continuously micro-stagger them if they shoot them in the face. It's like a weird weak spot that they have. It's kind of interesting.
Yep. I was also watching Kata do a little bit of practice on this square. I'm not sure. I wasn't watching him when he entered into this fight, but he would grab these explosive clusters and utilize these explosive barrels to do like 3/4 of the health of that Stone Digger troll, making this an even faster boss fight than it already is.
Wow, yeah, gotcha. And yeah, here it is, 3 for 3 right now on the board. 3 for Kata, 3 for NPT. Kind of figuring out. Okay,
with more relevant threats though.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we do have that diagonal for sure. The thing is that it is Moog. So, you know, you're not expecting 17 minutes in a Moog rush all of a sudden, especially with this weapon or with this health. But at the very least, having that on the board to where you can be like, okay, I can go for Deathbirds here, and then you have to deal with double Moog, that doesn't sound very fun. So I'm thinking in this case, with NPT already having Sacred Blade, I think pushing that Deathbird square is going to be huge for him.
I definitely agree, especially given the context that NPT doesn't have Dectus. Kata is currently ahead on Altus access, even though they're both literally at the same spot on the map.
Yep. Yeah, I do want to see the weapon checks here. I do want to see them both going for Twin Maiden Husks, see what the weapon shop has to offer, and then maybe also Kale and Beach Merchant. Those are the 3 shops I feel like are critical. If you don't find a good weapon, you have to go to one of those 3 and just check. It might take you 20, 30 seconds, but it's worth it. There are some weapons that make you save so much time.
I absolutely agree. However, the pacing of both of these players and the meta for Bingo Season 2 seems to be to rush the early ideas and then start doing the weapon checks. Yeah. Both of these guys are not comfortable. They still have staves marked on the board. Tom has Godric's Great Rune marked on the board. So maybe they're just going for a little bit of map presence right here, but I bet they're going for unique staves and trying to race that before they dedicate time to getting a little bit of a combat advantage.
It looks like that both might be considering Liurnia here for the Watchdogs and going for those crystal darts with a halberd check on top of that. I think that might be something that they're considering here, is going, you know what, I can do a weapon check. Also, when I do that weapon check, I can go for crystal darts, get that double Watchdog and Kaled, and that way I go for like a 2-for-1 deal here. And maybe I get lucky. You know, maybe it's Dragon Halberd. And that just seems to be a decent play, which both are thinking.
I also, a little bit of fun trivia here. I asked both these players how they rank the meta weapons as far as, you know, we got Helfen Steeple, we got the Stormhawk Axe, we got Dragon Halberd, we got Dragon Scale Blade, and there was a pretty consistent consensus. Both of them really like Stormhawk Axe. Tom did add a little bit of a caveat saying if there's the 30-inch square on the board, and there is, he likes Helfen Steeple a little bit better.
Yeah.
However, after that, they ranked Dragon Scale Blade followed by Dragon Halberd. Now, Tom did already do a katana check, and I did miss it. It came from the Magma Worm. Since he doesn't have it equipped, I would assume we didn't get a Moon Veil or a Meteorite Ore Blade or a Dragon Scale Blade. I assume it must have been a Nagakiba. Okay, chat does say Nagakiba. So
or Rivers of Blood, which also wouldn't have been great. So, but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Nagakiba, it's a good weapon. However, it's a smithing stone weapon, which is not great.
Yeah.
But we are getting the halberd check right here. And the thing about the weapon checks, and these players know this information, and I'm not sure I've actually seen it broken down on this end so far. Halberds, katanas, axes are pretty much the meta weapons, great swords as well. The thing about halberds is that there's 10 in the pool available, and there's really only 1, maybe 2 good halberd checks if you kill Tree Sentinel. So it's a bit unlikely to see Dragon Halberd or maybe Golden Halberd if you end up liking Golden Halberd. The katanas, on the other hand, they're very good checks. However, they're a little bit out of the way. There's only 7 of those in the pool, but you've got Yura, you've got the Magma Worm, you've got the Catacomb in Limgrave that can give you a katana check. There's a pretty solid way to come close to guaranteeing a solid katana. Meteoric Ore Blade, the Dragon Scale Blade, and to a lesser extent Moonveil are all good options. And as far as axes go, there's also 7 in the pool. And so this one axe check over here in I forget the name of this grace, but
the lakes area. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Where Catalyst is going to. We've seen Stormhawk come out of there a lot of the time, and that's because there's only 7 axes that are in the pool. So that makes getting Stormhawk a little bit more likely. If you combine that with the axe check in Stormveil, it makes getting the Stormhawk axe even a little bit more likely.
No, I definitely agree. Yeah, if that can be pulled off, I would love to see it. We do have the check here, and it is Rose's axe, which isn't the worst, especially with 30 intelligence. Like, if for this, in NPT's case, Rose's axe would be great, because he already has 30 int, you know, so that Ash of War is going to be doing a decent amount of damage. For Catalyst in this case, not a good weapon. So that would be something he probably won't consider. And maybe going for a round table check here, talking to Melina real quick. And NPT back in Limgrave, by the way.
Yep, so it looks like we've entered into the middle game here where both of the players are going to start doing their weapon checks and doing things that aren't literally just rushing squares as fast as they possibly can, just for the sake of building up a little bit of an advantage on their bingo threats, or on a combat advantage or a map advantage, whatever it may be. This is where we really see the game diverge at this point.
And we do actually still see that NPT kind of rushing, I guess, Watchdogs. They both got the crystal darts here. Catalyst go for the axe check and now the twin check here. Not really any weapon options that he's worth considering. They're all smithing weapons. But NPT now having a bit of a lead on 3 Watchdogs.
Tom going for this tank the fire strat.
Which seems kind of dangerous, but see, yeah, hey, if it works, it works.
Hey, it works. I haven't seen that from him yet, but yeah, if it works, why not?
Talk about secret strategies. That's the one Tom's been holding on to this whole time. There's a nice little drop down you can do here, but he just does the quick hop down to the right and then over. Going to be going for the first Watchdog. I do think this damage should be fine. And actually, Catalyst holding on to that Rose's axe, going for the EG teleporter. So I guess he is going to be using that.
I would definitely call the Rose's axe a B tier weapon. It's something that you can absolutely finish a bingo game with, no problems. It's just not optimal. It's not one of those amazing weapons. Stormhawk, Dragon Scale Blade, Alabaster, Helfen Steeple, something like that. It's not going to be as amazing as those options. However, especially if you're good with this weapon art. It's an awkward weapon art to deal with because of the way that the summons target. You can see, I'm sure we'll see it within this game where the summons just entirely miss their target. But if you know how to use it properly and you're careful with using that L2, it can definitely do some work.
Very nice fight here by NPT, by the way, on this Watchdog. Gets his first one. And I'm assuming he's going to take that Grace, by the way. This is what we're talking about with the Grace placement. And Catalyst does not have the first Grace, the Rot Terrace Grace, or Rot Balcony Grace that NPT has in this case. So he's the closest to double Watchdogs on top of that. So he's got a huge priority on this square right now. Yep, and that was from the synergy of getting the Magma Worm. The thing is, we don't see Rot View Balcony very often because it's a bit slow to get there. It's a bit weird. However, when you have Deathbirds on the board to rationalize getting Sacred Blade, when you have Magma Worm on the board to rationalize going up to Rot View Balcony as well, Tom is seeing that synergy and he's making it happen. He's taking advantage of something that we don't always see. We don't always see this pathing. There's a Somber 4 right there. I had no idea there was a Somber 4 right there. And so that's just saving a little bit of money for Tom, as well as taking advantage of these synergies on these somewhat off-meta lines. There we go. A little bit of parkour as well, going straight into that tunnel or in that catacomb. And Kata going for the Erdtree Avatar here for the Physic Explosive. Do we have that on the board? We don't. We don't. So Liurnia bosses? Yes. Oh, and tree bosses. Okay. That's a good synergy. I'm so sucked into the whole late game that I am missing all the mid-game squares right now. Yeah, you tunnel visioned on the late game a little bit. Yeah, but hey, that's what I'm excited for. You know, I think that's what people kind of hope for all the time. It's like, it's late game. We want to see late game. We want to see conflict. We want to see races, you know? And a lot of the bingo matches have turned into early game people separating, the players kind of going separate ways, which is also fun to watch. But having conflict obviously is the biggest enjoyment out of bingo in my opinion in that case, you know.
Personally, as a player, I'm a much bigger fan of the more separating games.
Yeah.
I find that ends up turning more into a strategy game, and I'm a big fan of that. I really do like playing in that sort of fashion. I'm not a huge fan of having a bunch of races all in a row and losing squares by a second.
That's fair. That's very understandable. I definitely get that feeling. But yeah, here we have very nice clear, by the way, from NPT through the catacombs. Sometimes you just die to those imps. They just wait for you to finish with that lever and then just iframe kill you. So nice running from this segment here from Tom, going straight into that fight. And this should be a really, really fast fight. He's got the crystal darts. We'll see which one he targets. He goes for the mage one. I like to go for the sword watchdog instead most of the time, but it doesn't really matter too much.
I personally have not found a difference. I know Chris is very opinionated about it, but I have not found much of a difference.
In this case, I would be attacking the mage one to make sure that both of them take enough damage.
Ooh,
but
very lucky.
Yeah, it looks like he's getting some really good RNG here from both watchdogs. And I used to go for maybe like one Stamport uppercut, and he should be fine. This would be a fourth square here for Tom.
Yeah, so the thing about this square is most of the time, the one of the two just ends up doing that big jump up and slam down move and then stun locking the other one, and you have to kill a full health Erd Tree Burial Watchdog. But in this case, Tom got a little bit lucky with the moveset selection, and without having to do much, he has both of them dead.
And this is where things get a little interesting, right? Because now we have Kata with that first diagonal, kind of targeting Moog, Lord of Blood, and now we have NPT now on that other diagonal, also targeting Moog, Lord of Blood. So they both are kind of forcing a square onto the other person, with it being Moog. Potentially.
Yeah, that's absolutely the idea that's going on here, but Catalyst, already having a little bit of that foresight, has started the tree bosses and the Liurnia bosses. He stopped working on it, going for a different idea at this point. I'm not exactly sure what that idea is yet. Maybe he's getting the Sacred Blade to go for the Deathrite birds as well, but I guess that's on the diagonal, maybe trying to just force a Moog race, and maybe Cat is saying, you can go for your bingo, I'll beat you to Moog, Lord of Blood. We've seen that cockiness from him in the interviews, so yeah. Maybe that's what he's opting into right here.
This is where I think, though, honestly, if it came down to both of them just forcing their diagonals, Tom's line will be faster. Because in this case, for Kata to actually win his diagonal... Well, it all comes down to
Moog, Lord of Blood.
Well, not necessarily, because also Kata would have to get Moog Sewers, and you have to have 2 Great Runes to even access that. Tom wouldn't have to get any Great Runes to finish his line. So in that case, he wouldn't have to go for any remembrance bosses, and could just kind of bulldoze his line a little bit faster. But Kata could obviously block it with Moog, Lord of Blood, for sure.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but whoever wins Moog, Lord of Blood is the only one that's able to threaten a bingo.
Sure,
that's the beautiful part about diagonal bingos. I've seen some players misutilize them, and I've seen some players really, really take advantage of them. The thing about diagonal bingos compared to the 10 other bingos on the board is they, by necessity, block every single other bingo. You simply can't do another bingo if someone gets the diagonal bingo. So if you're really far ahead, doing something like threatening a diagonal bingo doesn't make as much sense, because your opponent, by necessity, is going to have to go for a different bingo, probably, since they're so far behind, and they're going to have to block your diagonal bingo in order to actually win the game. However, early on, if your goal is to just stop your opponent from having bingo threats against you, diagonal bingos can be super powerful because they stop all of your opponent's threats immediately.
And we see here the Roses pickup by Tom, by the way, and I'm going to assume he's going to be using that for the rest of the match, just because 30 intelligence just plays way too well into the Roses axe. I don't think I'd go shopping for a different weapon either. That weapon art going to be doing some decent damage, especially because he already has some Somber Stones in his pocket. Might as well just commit to that. You know, don't waste too much time shopping. We'll see.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Sometimes this has caused players problems in the past. It's caused me problems in the past where I get a B tier weapon, I get a Rosis axe, I get something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I can make this work. I get an Ice Rind Hatchet. Okay, I can make this work. It's not great, but it's good enough. Let's just go rush some squares now. And sometimes the seed has a better weapon on it and the other player finds it. Sometimes it doesn't, and it's a waste of time to try to go for that S tier weapon when you are simply left with a B tier weapon.
Yep. And looks like that Tom is possibly going for the balloons here, or what is he going for here? Going for the tree spirit check? Nah, there's no way.
Liurnia bosses?
Okay, maybe
There's
going for that watchdog.
A catacomb watchdog down there. I'm surprised that he. Well, okay, no, I'm not surprised. I guess he could have replaced this watchdog with the Limgrave watchdog and gotten a little bit more synergy, but he probably was worried about sniping at that point.
Yeah.
3 watchdogs is a fast square, so I don't blame him for going for a square rush when he's concerned that he might be in a race for it. It can definitely make sense to not waste time and just simply go immediately for the square instead of going for synergy ideas.
Also grabbing some Grave Glove Wards. We do have Spirit Ash +4 still on the board. But we also have Kata going for Deathbirds now. Going for that Death Right Bird in Liurnia. Very, very nice fight. And then, as we mentioned, look at that Sacred Blade putting in that work on, I believe it's still a +0 Banished Knight Sword, that's a lot of damage here. This might be this has to be upgraded. That's way too much damage.
I don't think it is, Domo. The Sacred Blade on Deathbirds is crazy.
Yeah.
It is absolutely crazy.
And that was a lot, but hey, that was a very, very nice fight here from Kata. Also another Liurnia boss, so that's going to help him out a lot with that initial diagonal block. And then for Tom here, he's getting the Watchdog, which is also in Liurnia, so that's another 2-for-1 Liurnia boss, but also tree with boss in its name. Boss with tree in its name. Wow, that was weird, but we got it. And let's see. So this is going to be definitely Deathbird next for Kata.
Yep. And Kata's going for the Liurnia Deathbird, which isn't, it's not a very normal target. Most of the time, people go for the Limgrave Deathbird since it's a little bit easier. However, obviously, the Liurnia boss synergy on this board makes this red feathered branch sword Deathbird a little bit of a better option, as well as being a damage buff if he wants to take advantage of it. But I can't imagine he's going to opt into having 20% health for a little damage buff.
Okay, Tom actually rushing that Spirit Ash +4, grabbing that square now. Kind of maybe activating column 1 here, potentially, if he can rush that, so that he doesn't have to commit to the diagonal. Because, like, the later you get into, mid to late game, the more you have to kind of commit to something. And he's kind of, like, broadening his options here by grabbing some other squares to make sure, okay, you know what if I don't get tree bosses? What if I don't get Liurnia bosses? Can I still have a different line, like row 3, that can still kind of push Moog, Lord of Blood, to kind of have a different angle here?
Yeah, and this is perhaps demonstrating that downside of the diagonal bingos, where maybe Tom isn't forced into going for Moog, Lord of Blood anymore, and he could instead rush for Moog Sewers and have a strong column 1.
Yep. There we go. Kata on his Deathbird. Going to be grabbing one of the other diagonal squares that he needs. And that's just going to be Moog and Moog Sewers.
Yep. And obviously, Tom is going to have to do something about that.
Yeah.
But if Tom is able to claim one of those squares and have it build up some sort of counterplay, like going for Moog Sewers and threatening the column 1, or going for Moog Lord of Blood and threatening that diagonal, we could this is certainly not game over by any means. Obviously, Tom's up 5-4 at this point. However, I will say that Catalyst's diagonal threat is very threatening. Tom does need to find counterplay here. He's not able to just willy-nilly go do Moog Lord of Blood just because he can, or willy-nilly go do Moog Sewers just because he can. That's going to waste too much time, and it's not going to enable him to actually have any relevant threats going forward into this game.
I would definitely like to see Tom going for capital access, to be honest. You have Morgoth's Great Rune, you've got gold free, you've got Moog Sewers. If you're going to go for that Moog Sewer block, going for capital, I think, is better. Because then you can also, if you wanted to, go for Godric. Get that Godric's Great Rune restoration going on. There's a lot more playing into going for capital access here than just going straight for Moog, Lord of Blood, by just doing the invasion in Altus, and that's it. I think going for capital might just be a bit more of an effective play, and then going for sewers on top of that to help him out. And also, if he does go for sewers, he then has gold free. He can kind of push column 1, as you mentioned. That would be way better of a block, long term. Ooh.
I'm a little bit concerned that Tom might be considering Moog, Lord of Blood, more seriously here, and therefore pushing for this bosses in Liurnia Square right now for the sake of enabling that diagonal. But Kat is already ahead on it, and it looks like Kat is rushing this Liurnia Square, which means Tom is currently wasting his time by going for this Liurnia boss synergy. Obviously, he doesn't have the ability to know that. At a certain point, you got to make guesses in bingo. That's just what it is. And unfortunately for Tom, I think he's making the wrong guess right here.
It was a little tough anyways for Tom, because before, when he claimed the Watchdog Square, 12 minutes have passed since the last time Kata even marked a square. So there's been a lot of like dead air on Kata's side, so that NPT kind of had to just guess of, okay, what is he going for? I don't know. Let me grab Watchdogs. Let me grab Spirit Summons. Let me do something here to at least get something on the board going. And sadly, it does die to the explosion of Golden Land.
Yeah, obviously not good. We don't like to see that. Where is Kata going? I thought he was going to be going for Royal Revenant, but he's instead opting for running towards Altus.
Yeah, I think he's going straight for that Spirit Spring into the Dectus Elevator from what it looks like. Going for that Grace right outside the main gate, I guess is what it's called. Main gate Grace.
Mm-hmm. He could also be making a play for Vike's Church, since that's one of the steps for Moog, Lord of Blood. That's one of the places where you can get the Maiden Blood from.
Oh, that is super fair. That is super fair. MPT having a bit of an issue here with the camera, trying to get good angles for when Golden Land does happen. Seems to be a little too close to the Erdtree, so that's trying to dodge the light beams is a little trickier. He does get a better angle here this time, so he can just run around. Doesn't have to roll or anything.
Oh, it's for the Kata is going for the Crystallians. This is something that I've noticed out of Kata, and I don't think he means to be doing it. I know that Kata's philosophy is go for bingos when it makes sense to go for bingos and go for majority when it makes sense to go for majority. I've seen him very consistently threaten 1 or 2 bingo lines and then go for a 3rd bingo line. And I don't think he means to be showing that pattern.
Yeah.
But that it seems to be what he's going for here. He's opening up his different options right now.
Yeah, column 4 looking very powerful. If he does get Crystallian and Liurnia bosses, then he just has Godric's Great Rune and Grave and Ghost Glovewort Bell Bearings, which he has priority on because NPT still doesn't have access to Altus. So this is looking like an actually very fast bingo compared to Moog, Lord of Blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Kata maybe is able to build the timeline in his head and say, okay, Tom has been doing this. There hasn't been a whole lot of snipes leaving ambiguity in Tom's timeline so far. Mm-hmm. And so Kata might be able to build that timeline saying, okay, I don't think Tom has gathered the Dectus medallion yet.
Yeah.
And that might give Kata the confidence to say, okay, I win this column 4 bingo. I'm gonna rush for it, and we'll see if that actually ends up being the case, and we'll see if Tom is able to bring that back, or when he even recognizes this threat.
You know, it honestly wouldn't be the worst option to go to Virgin Abductor Duo here for Tom if he wants to get quicker Altus access. It also plays into the 6 Altus bosses. So that is a little bit of an option. I'm gonna have
to give you some pushback on that, Domo.
That's fine. That's fine. You know, it is a little bit of a scary square, but you do get Somber 5 and 6 on top of that, which does help you with the Rose's Axe. So having a Somber 6 weapon going into Virgin Abductor Duo fight, which gives you a little bit of quicker access to Altus, plus also another boss for Altus, 6 Altus bosses. I think I don't know, it seems to have some synergy there, you know?
There is absolutely synergy on this board. However, I did hear you say that Virgin Abductor Duo was the fastest way into Altis during my semifinal with Tom. Incorrect, Domo. It still is the Dectus Medallion. So if the priority is to completely rush Altis, then it should be going for Dectus Medallion. However, like you said, there's lots of synergy. There's duo trio. Is there duo trios?
There's not, no.
There is not duo trios.
Just
there's Altis bosses, however,
yes.
as well as the 5 and 6, which can't be understated. Getting your weapon to a little bit of a higher level, the difference between +4 and +6 is definitely relevant, and you can feel it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And nice Revenant fight here from Kata, by the way. It is so honestly interesting to see like how much you can actually abuse Revenant. I know a lot of people really fear that boss because how spastic it is. It can be everywhere and just a lot of attacks, does a lot of damage. But seeing bingo players be like, hey, you don't have to use the heal cheese. You can literally just, if you know the moveset, just bulldoze them. Go ahead, get that stagger going, get the, back off a little bit from the boss, get that riposte, and it's going to be close to dead anyways. Having a little bit more confidence in that fight definitely helps.
Particularly with greatswords. Greatswords script the Royal Revenant if you have it sufficiently highly leveled. The 2 charged R2s with any greatsword is going to stagger the Royal Revenant. If you got a Helfen Steeple and Alabaster, you're golden on that boss fight.
Yeah. And here we go. Both of them look like they're going possibly for the same thing here, which is collecting staves. Tom killing Tops. I don't think Kata actually killed Tops, though. I think I don't know, maybe I missed it. Maybe he's moving too fast. Maybe he did. I think they both actually did. So, possibly looking for a row 4 block here with collecting 6 unique staves.
And like I said, we're seeing this is something that Kata's managed to do even in close games. Obviously, it's 5-5 here, but we see such a positional advantage on Catalyst's side.
Yeah.
What is Tom threatening here? The column 2, that's gone. The row 1, that's gone. The row 2, the column 1 it's just too far away. It's not threatening at this point. But Kata has this massive positional advantage. He has that diagonal. He has row 4. He has column 4 as well. And it makes it so that Tom has to make a bunch of guesses that he's unlikely to guess correctly. He's going for staves right now to stop the column 4, but what if Kata pushes for the row 4? But what if Kata pushes for the diagonal, or what if Kata pushes for column 4? It's too much to guess. And somehow, even in these close games, Kata manages to get this positional advantage.
Tom getting blasted when he loads back into the game from the 2-headed sorcerer. And Kata getting the Pumpkinhead here. Access to Selen, going to go for the 12 sorceries, I believe.
He got Night Maiden's Mist, which I know both of these players love Night Maiden's Mist. There's no sorceries on this board, but since it has flat damage,
there is.
It's
Oh, I mean sorceries as in like remembrance sorceries.
Yes.
Oh, my bad.
Killing something with sorceries.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No, you're good.
Since they really like this flat damage. It makes it so you don't have to level up your staff at all. It makes it so that you don't have to level int. You just do flat damage.
Yeah.
And even killing something like Radon is pretty reasonable with Night Maiden's Mist.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I do think this was a smart play from Kata. I think just seeing the potential column 1 be like, you know what, I'm just not going to deal with that. Let me just get rid of that real quick. And now pretty much having access from the whole board besides row 3. And row 3 not looking very pretty.
And we were talking 10 minutes or so ago, and I said Tom needs to be getting counterplay, either killing Moog Sewers to threaten that column 1 or killing Moog Lord of Blood to threaten that diagonal. Neither of those are options anymore. Tom is out of good options.
Yep. He's got to react to something here, but he does have at least 3 bingo lines currently staring him in the face. He's got column 4, row 4, and the diagonal all kind of working together, at least having 2, if not 3 squares in those lines. That's a lot of pressure to deal with, for sure.
Yeah, and even though the score is close here, it's difficult for Tom. And I think we're really starting to see that pressure get to him a little bit here. Like I said, when Tom gets a little bit behind, I've seen him sort of crumble. I've seen him make rushed, worse decisions and have execution mistakes, which is very uncharacteristic of him.
He is going for the Dectus here, so that is definitely a good call. Possibly going to go for, I want to say, gold free. That might just be something later on that he's keeping in mind, just so he can at least get that row 4 out of the way. But honestly, you should rush the bell bearings, the Ghost and Grave Glove Ward bell bearings. I think that might not be a bad idea. Get rid of that column 4. That is the fastest of the bingo lines, I would say. So going for the bell bearings into potentially seals or staves. I honestly seals because you can get the Erdtree seal. I think it's the Erdtree seal in Altus next to the Tree Spirit. Is it Erdtree or is that a different one? Golden Seal? I forget the name.
Golden Order is the one.
Golden Order
up next to the Tree Spirit.
Yeah. Okay.
Tom does have a route to win here. He has 2 options. He has column 3 and he has row 3. I believe Kata is going to shut down both of those options right now, but I think what Tom needs to be doing is developing a threat on one of those 2 rows, winning the Moog Lord of Blood square, and then hoping that he wins a bingo race. If Kata ends up going for a column 4 bingo push and Tom ends up winning the Crystallian square, for example, that row 3 starts to look a little bit threatening with something like Moog Lord of Blood. I really want to see Tom going for some sort of counterplay at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, he is kind of prepping Dectus here, but is also taking his time. I think dropping into Celia Town here, going to be grabbing the Staff of Loss and possibly Meteorite Staff as well. So kind of considering the Staves square as a threat, or at the very least as a nice block for row 4. And then moving straight into what?
Oh,
I think maybe that was intentional for mistake.
It might be. But there's also a bug with Torrent where if you have a heavier weapon in your hand when you fall off an area, you don't get your double jump. But it looks like in this case it was intentional for Tom. But that's definitely caused me problems in the past where you have a big greatsword in your hand, you fall off a cliff, and then you don't get your double jump.
Yeah, I gotta hold your breath there for just a moment. He almost died there, but luckily was able to heal. I think he's going straight for Staff of Loss. And then, I think he's going straight for Meteorite Staff, and then goes... I'm hoping he's going to go for that Ghost and Grave Glove Ward Bell Bearing. That is a tongue twister. Ghost and Grave Glove Ward Bell Bearing. That's a tough one. Try it, Bushy. No.
Grave and Ghost Glovewort Bell Bearing. Look at that.
Don't take your time. That's not fair.
Grave and Ghost Glovewort Bell Bearing.
Okay. Oh, hey, that was good. Yeah, that was good.
Professional speaker here.
That was solid. And here we go. Going into the Market fight for Kata. I think he's looking at that Godric's Great Rune restoration, by the way.
Yep, that does seem to be Kata's idea here, pushing for that column 4, which could be good news for Tom. I gotta be honest, I don't like to see Tom going for the Stav square here. However, we have the benefit of seeing both perspectives. It's a lot easier for us to make these calls when we can say, oh, Kat is really far ahead on Altis. Tom is a little bit more desperate. Tom doesn't necessarily know that yet. So it's a little bit easier for us to say, Tom needs to be pushing for that counterplay right here instead of playing for a more majority strategy by going for something like Unique Stavs, which doesn't offer any sort of counterplay for Tom. It instead only blocks that row 4, preventing Kata from going for that bingo. I think Tom's just going to be chasing this entire game if he doesn't end up making a bingo threat of his own.
I do think also, by the way, for Tom, though, making some decent choices with what he has, going for that Staves block, into already grabbing his last staff, being that Wandering Noble, into grabbing the other half, the Dectus, I think was at least some very good pathing choice. You know, being like, okay, I'm ready here, might as well go drop down, grab the other half, the Dectus, and then I can go straight to Altis, and then possibly go for that Grave and Ghost Glovewort Bell Bearing block. I nailed that.
Absolutely. These guys are routing masters. I'm always impressed by just how much synergy they find between these random different objectives and how to route them in a very, very optimal way. It's very super impressive, especially given the fact that speedruns, they aren't random. You run the same place every time and you just try to do it quickly. But for bingo, the routes are randomized and you have to figure out that route on the fly. And both of these guys do an amazing job of doing that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And let's see here. I think is Kata going to be pushing the Restore Godric's Great Rune is going to be the question here, because he's had a past of kind of holding on to that square and be like, you know what, I kind of half did that. I'm going to come back to that, though. And it looks like, he's pivoting. He's going for something else here instead. Maybe he just knows that after collecting 6 staves that, Godric's Great Rune is not being contested right now. So why waste my time on this myself if I can go for...
Oh, but Tom's going for it now. This could be bad news for Tom. This could be a lot of wasted time.
Yep. That's where we could... it depends on how long Kata stays away from this square, because Kata has not killed Godric yet. All he has done is killed Margit and gone for the Restore Godric's Grace, but hasn't actually killed Godric. So if NPT can get past that and then get that extra momentum, and he's pivoting right away. Okay.
I think we're seeing a little bit of the nerves. I think Tom is looking for ideas, but he's perhaps realizing that he's a bit behind and a little bit more desperate than he thought he was. Which, if that's the case, I'm happy to see that from Tom, because from my perspective, I think he needs to be playing in a little bit more of a desperate fashion. I think he's losing and he needs to be playing to his outs right now. Yep.
It looks like Kata going to be going for Radahn here as one of his remembrances, potentially. It seems like because that way he preps the Ghost Glovewort Bell Bearing, which he'll need, and he needs 2 remembrances to get into the capital anyways. I think Radahn's a great choice here. I think he's just prepping both Great Rune Bearers, and then I think as soon as he actually gets the Grace... This is going to be my guess here. This is my Kata read, all right? He's going to go take the teleporter into Redmane Castle, grab the Grace, not fight Radahn, go back to Stormvale Castle, fight Godric, then do the Great Rune, and then go to Radahn. I think he's going to be doing this like weird pivot back and forth type of strategy, which I've seen him do quite a few times before.
There's absolutely something to be said about sequencing here, Domo.
Yeah.
Not finishing objectives when they're not getting contested and instead opting to do parts of objectives that get you more map presence is just better sequencing. For example, a really common example of this is the Smithing Stone Bell Bearing Square, where you have to collect one from Liurnia and you have to collect one from Altus. It is almost always a better choice to go for the Altus one first, because that gets you more map presence, so that if the square does get sniped away from you, you actually end up getting that map presence and you don't lose anything. You were progressing towards something that's going to be useful in the future, rather than going for something that is exclusively for the square.
Yeah. So he did pivot off, so I was right about that, but he did not go back to Stormvale here. He is going back and going for what seems to be prepping the Grave Glovewort Bellbearer and going for that Watchdog in Altus instead. Possibly grabbing that Grace and then going back somewhere else. He's not going to be finishing any of these. He's currently prepping Graces, and I think this is one of the things we were talking about where their reaction comes down to what the board says. So having a lot of things kind of set up, but then kind of leaving it, and then if a player does something on the board to where they are like, okay, now I've got time, let me commit to this real quick and grab this because you did something else just now, I think is what Kat is kind of prepping for.
And this is something that I think these two do an excellent job of utilizing. It's this concept of reactivity. You're really only allowed to use it in when you're ahead. But if you are winning, and let's say, for example, just to illustrate the point, you're at an end game, 11 squares to 12 squares, you have the 12 squares. You only need to win one of those squares. So it's better for you to prep both of them and just do the one that your opponent doesn't do, rather than rush for one, lose the race, rush for the other, lose the race.
Right. And it looks like NPT might be forcing Raya's hand here, going straight for Dectus Elevator, which I think is not a bad choice. It's kind of promoting his row 3. but it also gives away that he's now has Altus access, because the board currently has not technically said anything about him having Altus access.
Cat is going for Crystalians. This is going to be a problem for Tom.
Yep. So that's going to kind of already backfire for him. That row 3 is going to be taken away as soon as he kind of builds progress towards it. But this also kind of helps Tom to kind of have some extra time, go for Godric's Great Rune or go for the Bell Bearings. He has to make a choice once that square is taken.
And the thing is, Kata's ahead on both of those already.
Yeah.
Kata has already prepped it. So it's easy to say from our perspective because we got to see both players. Tom needed to make some sort of guess about which bingo Kata was pushing for, and he needed to guess correctly and snipe probably the Crystalian square off of Kata while he was doing all of this. That's not easy to see. It was a guess on Tom's part since there's so many threats, so many relevant things that Tom needed to be worried about. But at this point, Tom is once again forced into a bunch of bad options. He needs to guess between Godric's Great Rune, guess between Ghost and Grave Glovewort, and on top of guessing between Moog Sewers and Moog Lord of Blood, which Kata has just been sitting on this whole time. And hypothetically, if Kata wanted to push for that, there's not a whole lot stopping him.
Yep. And this is going to be this is like one of the harder parts I say about bingo is when you literally have a 50-50 guess from a player's perspective. It's like, okay, I literally just have to hope to God that this other player is not going for that, and there's nothing I can really do or guess about or, prep in any way to know I'm making the right choice. Like, it's a pure on guess, and I just hope I don't waste my time. And those are the scariest moments.
And if you have the luxury of being a little bit ahead, which I don't think that's the situation that Tom's in here, but if you have that luxury, you can prep both of those squares right here. If you're Tom, you can prep Ghost and Grave Glovewort and Godric's Great Rune because you only need to win one of them. However, since Kata is even on squares here and threatening more relevant bingos, I don't think Tom has that luxury to say, oh, okay, I just trade a square here.
Okay, and yeah, it looks like Tom is making the choice of going for Restore Godric's Great Rune. Kata did pick up that Somber 5, by the way, from that Crystalian Tunnel. Going to be going for that +5. And let's see where Tom goes after this. He's going for Stormveil, isn't he?
Yeah, Kata went to the Limgrave Tower Bridge. Yep, this is bad.
This is bad.
Tom's best move here, which it's just a guess. There's no way for him to actually know it. Tom's best move is to kill Margit, prep this Godric's Great Rune square, and then pivot off to the Ghost and Grave and Ghost Glovewort Bell Bearings. Because Kata's already ahead on that, and Tom can kind of use this as leverage to win one of these squares, which it's still a bad trade for Tom. However, he gets to keep playing if he ends up doing that. Unfortunately for him, he made this first guess incorrectly. We'll see if he makes this, even gives himself a chance on this second guess.
Yeah, this is going to be tough, but who knows? Maybe in this case, Kata kills Godric, but doesn't actually go for the restoration, pivots to Radahn first, gets the kill, and then goes back again, because he does like to do that, and then maybe that will give Tom enough time to actually get this square. I don't know.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. I don't think Kata does that when the threat is so obvious. 3 squares already marked very recently.
That's fair.
I don't think Kata goes for that, but it's possible.
You know what sucks is that we're avoiding double Moog here. I made sure I had both, and no one's going for it. That is brutal.
Yeah, and it's not looking like Tom's pivoting, which I don't blame him for making this choice. Like I said, yeah. I think he's behind enough to the point where he just has to say, I make my guess and I hope it works. If it doesn't, we lose. So I don't blame him for making this choice. But it's a little bit unlucky that he went for the square that Kata went for first rather than going for an opposite one. And Tom can still make a comeback on the Grave and Ghost Glovewort. There's obviously Radahn to go through, but Kata is so far ahead on that square. Maybe Kata doesn't realize that and we see him pivot off, but knowing Kata, I think he's going to confidently say, I'm ahead, I go for this.
Yeah, and we'll find out in a couple of seconds here after Godric's very lengthy dialogue to see what choice he actually makes. I'm very interested here. Where's he going? Okay, he is going for it. He is going for it. Okay, this is going to be time sink here for Tom. And possibly just GG's, to be honest, in this case.
Unless Kata is convinced that Tom is ahead on Graven Ghost Gloveworts, but it's possible. Like, it's possible that Kata says, okay, Tom went for Graven Ghost Gloveworts when we know that Tom was going for Godric's Great Rune. And he might say, I play for majority. That's possible for Kata to make that call, but Kata's a cocky player. I don't think he does that. I think he goes for it.
I mean, he's got priority on both of them, you know?
He does.
So
the only question is, does he know that he does?
I think the reason why, honestly, I think Kata did not go for the Bell Bearings but went for Godric's Great Rune wasn't just because he had the Grace, but he did see the last square that Tom got was Raya's Hand of Volcano Manor, which means he has Altus access, which means he activated Radahn's Festival. So most likely, that is the knee-jerk reaction of going for, okay, I've got Radahn, let me go for Bell Bearings as like the next thing rather than going backwards. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is necessarily an intentional block from Kata, but more or less just being safe and not wanting to race Bell Bearings in case Tom's going for that.
That's absolutely fair. That could absolutely be what's happening here. And if that's the case, I would think Kata might not go for those Graven Ghost Glovewort Bell Bearings to finish it off. But obviously we'll have to wait a minute while he rides up this elevator, and then we'll figure out.
Yeah, this is tough. This is definitely tough, especially for Tom, who's on the way now. And then realizing that whole sequence of Margit into Godric was almost wasted. I mean, somewhat. Not necessarily, because you still need capital access. So getting Godric is still worth it. But the trip to the tower is the worst part here.
Yeah, and at this point, the column 4 is the relevant thing. And if we take a look back on this game, Tom did have an opportunity when Kata was being very reactive in the middle game, where from our perspective, we can tell he needed to go for something like Crystalians to develop that counterplay, and he didn't go for it. He didn't make that call. He played in a bit of a more majority fashion, and it's kind of biting him in the butt here.
Yep, and Kata going straight for that Radahn's Grace, sitting down multiple times. I think he just, but maybe he wanted to activate Radahn or Godric's Great Rune, but kept on goofing it up or something, or I'm not sure. I don't know. That was weird.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
I don't know what the hell was that all about. But yeah, it looks like Tom is just going to have to react to that as soon as he can and make his way over to Redmane Castle. But he is nowhere close to that.
Yeah, I mean, Kata has at least a 5-minute lead on this. He would need to have one hell of a Radahn incident, and seeing how much Vig he has, I don't think that's going to be happening.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree. This is definitely pretty tough here. But hey, incidents do happen. So we never know for sure.
But just to be clear, I don't want to be saying that Tom necessarily made a mistake. I think this is something that gets missed when you have both perspectives. Guesses aren't always a mistake. If he made the wrong guess, which he absolutely did in this game, that doesn't always mean that he made some sort of mistake. He identified the valid options and he had to choose one.
Oh yeah.
And he chose wrong. And
100%.
Sometimes that's just how it is. That's how bingo goes.
Yeah, there was no misplay. I definitely agree with that. It's just pure on luck and just hoping that you make the right guess.
Yeah. And you can like try to read into your opponent's mind a little bit by saying, what did they go for last? What do I think they're going to go for next? But it's tough. And the information isn't always there. And oftentimes a lot of it comes down to the guesses that you make. And in this case, it does seem as if Tom made the wrong guess.
But he is catching up here a little bit already in Redmane Castle now. Kata having a bit of a shaky start here, but is getting the damage now off. I think the summons just really kind of freaked Radahn out there for a moment. But a lot of nice damage now coming out here from Kata for sure.
Yep. We're seeing those summons whiff. Look at that. I said we were going to see a summon whiff on this game.
And yeah, this is, I don't know. I guess this depends now a little bit on how the whole Watchdog Catacomb goes. But even then, Kata has that prep too. Like there's I don't know, Kata can't miss pretty much in this situation. Like he's got everything set up the way he needs to.
I gotta be honest, I didn't think this was how this was gonna go. I've seen Kata do this exact same thing to every other player in the tournament. He develops 2-3 bingo threats and makes it so difficult to guess what the actual relevant threats are. Mm-hmm. And then he goes for one of them, and the guesses are so hard. How do you know if he's going for Moog or Moog Sewers or Moog Lord of Blood? How do you know if he's going for Godric's Great Rune? How do you know if he's going for Crystalians? How do you know if he's going for Graven Ghost Glovewort? Like there's so many options that you have to guess with the way that Kata plays. And I really didn't expect to see that, at least in this game. Maybe it's a bit of a different story in the next game. Because I was thinking Tom would give him a little bit more of a run for his money and make this positional threatening that Kata is so good at less relevant. But Kata played his game here, and he got everything he wanted to this game.
Yeah. I do think, though, that, just like last week for the semifinals, maybe it's just for Tom. He just needs a warm-up game, and then he might pull through on game 2, even possibly game 3. That sometimes people just need that, where their nerves are kind of hitting on that first game, and then they are finally feeling comfortable to where in game 2 they really bring in the sauce.
I would definitely agree. We've seen Tom do that exact thing in the past, and what I really want to see, we've seen Tom compete on majority in this game just fine. That's not surprising. What I really want to see is more positional play from Tom. I want to see him not jam all of his squares into a corner. I want to see him block those bingos and make threats of his own. There wasn't a single relevant bingo threat the entire game for Tom, and there was 3, 4 for Kata. That is such a massive advantage to try to overcome if you're Tom. And it's very difficult to do.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree on that. Some nice damage here from Tom. Gets the Radahn kill, but he's a little bit behind on the bell bearing here. Kata already almost at the bell bearing at this point, and then he can just pivot straight over to that Grace for the Watchdog.
Yep, I would expect to see Kata probably go for that. I don't think he commits this much time, particularly with no synergy, going for this bell bearing. If he's just not going to finish off the square, that would be a very strange pivot.
Yeah, very silly. Now, Kata has probably been one of the more consistent players when it comes to like pushing his bingo. Like when he knows he has a bingo line, he pretty much just like forces it as much as he can, as long as he knows that he's got the advantage on it.
Well, even in this game, we've seen that Kata was sitting on that diagonal threat for the whole game, and he never pushed it. And when I asked him specifically, I'm not gonna lie, Domo, I did a little bit of dogging on you. I asked him, have you felt like commentary has misrepresented your gameplay in the past a little bit? And he said no, not really. However, he did mention he doesn't like players getting labeled as majority players or bingo players. He thinks all the players are, for the most part, going for majority when it makes the most sense and pushing for bingos when it makes the most sense. And he kind of explained his thought process to me a little bit, saying, I try to threaten the bingo threats pretty much always because they're always valuable. If you're able to threaten bingos, your opponent is going to be forced into doing things they aren't necessarily going to want to do. And I only go for the bingos if I'm confident that I'm ahead on them and I actually win the bingo race. And obviously we're seeing that right here. He wasn't confident that he was winning the race to Moog Sewers and Moog Lord of Blood. he wasn't confident that he was winning the race on row 4. And it isn't until right now that we see just how confident he is in his column 4 that he starts pushing for that bingo.
Yeah. Yep. Nice little kukri use here, by the way. This knight can be very devastating when it comes to the ladder, so I do like that. I should do that more often myself.
Yeah, there's all sorts of kukri tech that both of these players know. At the beginning of the season, I don't think I was seeing anyone even doing the kukri tech for Moongrum, but that's a really useful tech that you can use kukris for. Moongrum is always a pain in the ass, no exception. So being able to just bypass him without wasting time is a huge gain.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Tried to Memory of Grace there, but does get stabbed in the back. A little bit of a time loss, but not the end of the world in this case here. But Tom is on the way, but at least like 3 minutes behind here. Kata is going to get this boss fight, and that's going to be a full-on column 4 bingo here for Catalyst in game 1.
And masterful play with really seeing the advantage of positioning. We've been talking this entire time as if Catalyst is just hard winning. Obviously, we have the benefit of knowing map progression as well. Tom doesn't necessarily know that, but it just goes to show how the scoreboard doesn't always demonstrate how close the game is. It's been within 1 square the entire time, maybe 2.
Yeah.
But Kata's just been winning because of the bingo threats. The positioning that he's been getting on these squares has just been so much better than what Tom was going for. Tom went for an early game column 2 idea. It was pretty much immediately shut down by the Dectus Medallion. That's a little bit of a lucky pick on Catalyst's part, but it demonstrates the point. The positioning really won Kata this game.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And that is game 1 going straight to Kata here. And we're not going to do any post interviews until the end of the best of 3s. So we're going to go into a quick 10-minute break. So thanks so much for holding on here, guys. I'll let the players know as well real quick. But yeah, dude, what a crazy game. What an absolute crazy game. Really hoping for some Moog action, but you know what? I still think it was a fantastic showcase of board presence and maneuverability.
I think we're seeing the bingo meta get optimized here, Domo. I think this is where the bingo meta ends up getting optimized to. I don't think 25 square boards is very common.
Yeah. 100%. And like I was talking to Josh about that last week too, where you have matches that the time has been reduced significantly. The beginning of the season, it was a lot of like an hour 45, 2 hour, majority wins. And we haven't seen like a 2 hour majority win in quite a while. It's been an hour and 10 bingos, an hour and 15 bingos. And I think that's just, based on that meta being refined, but also players getting really comfortable in their strategies and their execution, for sure.
Absolutely. Execution can't be understated, but also I think players are taking advantage of these bingo threats much more so than was happening at the beginning of the season, and they're really starting to take advantage of all of the tools at their disposal.
Yep. No, I definitely agree. We're going to go into a quick 10-minute break here, guys. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Go ahead, get some drinks, get some snacks. Game 2 on its way. NPT versus Catalyst in the finals. We'll be back. Thank you.
Am I good to talk? Yes.
All right, and welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Game 2 of Bingo Brawlers Finals here. NPT versus Kata. They're currently getting prepped for their second match. Currently, Kata taking the first victory here. Welcome back, Bushy, by the way.
Thank you.
No problem. For Game 2, man, that first match was, I think, a great showcase of positioning on a bingo board, for sure. I think that's probably one of the best scenarios we could have hoped for when showcasing how positioning can really dictate how the game can flow and creating pressure in multiple ways.
I absolutely agree. And I think it also goes to show how it's not always the middle square or the diagonal squares, which, speaking of which, Domo, I don't know why you call them corner squares. We call them diagonal square.
Because they're like in the corner. That's why I don't know. It's more or less like that's Dom terminology. You know what I mean? Not bingo terminology. But yeah, no, it's the corner squares are just they're powerful, man. They're very powerful.
But the thing about them is they're powerful on undeveloped boards. Obviously, no one's going to argue that the center square is the strongest at the beginning, and the corner squares are. Oh, you got me, guys. You already got me. You got me saying corner squares.
That's how it works.
The diagonal squares are the second most powerful. However, as soon as the board develops, the squares that are relevant start to change. Obviously, we saw the Crystallian square, which was neither a diagonal or a center square, being very relevant for a very long time in the last game.
Yeah.
And that's simply because as soon as squares start getting marked and threats start getting made, it's not as simple as, oh, just get the center or, oh, just get the diagonal. Those are not always the most valuable as soon as you have a little bit of board development.
Yeah. And going into the best of threes, you being a semifinalist, was there anything that you kind of like had to prep? You taking the first match within those best of threes, was there anything going into like match 2 that you had to like really consider after your first match? You kind of like, I don't know, like a mental prep of some sorts of like, okay, I got to focus on this now, or was it just like keep doing what you're doing and go into game 2 that way?
I was confident in the game plan that I was going for. The idea being win the early game, which is very difficult to do against Tom, but nonetheless, still the idea. Win the early game and hope that it flusters him a little bit, which I think I successfully did in the first game. Mm-hmm. However, the remaining 2, Tom did a much better job of winning that early game and playing his game. As soon as Tom's able to play his game and not have to worry about his opponent's strategy and worry about how do I stop all of my opponent's threats, he's amazing. He's incredible. He is probably the best player when he's winning. Catalyst has a little bit more of an advantage in maintaining that composure and making those comebacks. So I really want to see Tom win this early game and we get a clash of titans here.
Good old moving into game 3, hopefully. That's the hope. I think that's like the biggest thing for running any kind of like competition finals is you want it to go to the very end. You don't want it to be like, hey, we're almost there, and then it's only game 2 and then it's over. You're like, oh, it kind of blue ball the whole community.
Suspense is nice.
Yeah.
However, that's us commentators' job, right? We got to make it fun always, no matter what, right?
100%. Let's go ahead and move over into the match screen here. Looks like both players are kind of ready. Looks like they have a crystal sword and the bandit's curved bow, some kind of curved bow. Not a very good one. Short bow.
With poison arrows, or are those magic arrows? I can't really tell.
I believe those look like poison arrows. Pretty sure those are poison arrows. More of a green
poison arrows
tint.
could definitely be relevant if there's a remembrance boss with bow square on the board. However,
you guys already see the board.
Sword.
Sorry. Oh. I'm already showcasing it on the other. I have to reshuffle now. Hold on. Son of a gun. I picked that one and everything. All right. Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
I'll stall while you manage to find a new board that you like. But as I was saying, if there's a remembrance square with killing with a bow, obviously those poison arrows can end up being pretty powerful. However, Crystal Sword is perhaps the worst weapon in the game. It's a short sword, which is not a amazing class of weapon. On top of being I'm pretty sure like literally the worst one as far as damage output goes. The reason being it's split damage. It does straight sword, sorry. It does magic damage and physical damage. And the thing about split damage is enemies have flat resistances, which makes split damage just worse. It's worse than a single damage type. If you can do only physical, it tends to be better than doing split damage. Obviously, there's things like weaknesses and things like that, but as far as bingo goes, magic damage, there's not a whole lot of things that are weak to magic damage. I mean, we're looking at like BBK and we're looking at like Valiant Gargoyles. And beyond that, not great. On top of all that, weapon kind of just sucks.
And with that, we're going to move into our matchup. By the way, I did pick a new one. I do like this one more. I'm not going to lie. This is a mean board. And you guys are going to see that is rune level 60 as a center square here. We have Lanciax, gold free, 4 different remembrances. We've got Magnus on the board. We've got remembrance sorceries. We got some nice, mean stuff here for both players kind of to deal with. Let's see what they kind of consider like options to go for in the early game.
Yeah, not a whole lot of very good early game options. There is collect 2 painting rewards. And even though it may not seem like it, this is a square that synergizes super well with Dectus Medallion.
Yeah.
Dectus Medallion being the best way to get to Altus, the best fastest way to get to Altus. It makes this square actually pretty valuable to claim early on, because that means you get that Dectus Medallion. It's kind of like claiming Dectus Medallion as well as claiming a square, which just feels super good. You claim Dectus Medallion, you get that 7,500 runes from Fort Feroth. You get the Radigan Sword Seal as well. It's a very good route, and there's a reason why pretty much every challenge run goes there to begin with. And you get the added bonus of getting a square on top of that. Mm-hmm. The second best early game synergy that I see here is kill 3 duo trio bosses along with those 3 watchdogs. That has synergy within itself as well as threatening on the same column, or same row, sorry. That row 2 could definitely be an early game threat if someone decides to commit to that. Then obviously we got Soldier of Godric Barefist Only, which a lot of players have rated that as a bit of a bait square. I think rightfully so. It takes a little bit to actually go out there and do that square, and it's not in a super relevant position here. We are seeing a Bloodhound's Fang class, by the way.
Yeah, we saw Bloodhound Fang and Meteoric Ore Blade. So kind of some good starting weapon options here. I'm kind of hoping that they go for different classes, but honestly, Bloodhound Fang being the speedrunner's weapon, you know that Kata has a lot of experience with that weapon. So I'm just going to assume he's going to go for that class. Like, there's no reason for him not to. And we see Tom hovering that same class. It's a bit of a no-brainer. I'm not going to lie. Season 1, this weapon kind of being the dominant choice. Seeing this in the finals for Season 2, I'm not going to lie, kind of exciting.
Yeah, especially with both the players being speedrunners. Both of these guys love this weapon and know how to use this weapon. I'm a little bit surprised. I've been seeing Tom really enjoying that Meteoric Ore Blade recently, though. But obviously he's saying, I know Bloodhound's Fang. It's a little bit better. Let's go for that. Now, Commander O'Neill is also on this board. Commander O'Neill can synergize with that 2 painting square, because you have to run right past Commander O'Neill to get over to Celia, to get over to Fort Feroth to get that painting. Mm-hmm. On top of being a corner square. You see that? That one's actually in the corner, Domo.
I mean, they're both corners. I don't know, side corner, easy corner. I don't know. Yeah, I got you.
As well as being pretty fast. That's definitely a pretty fast square to accomplish. But if we take a look at what these players are marking or starring, we see them starring the finish off a boss with the explosive physic, which that's kind of rare to see, because that's a relatively, that's getting close to mid game kind of square. But this board does not have a lot of early game.
Yep, I agree. And I kind of like that, because then it's going to be coming down to making clearer choices. You know, you don't have the early game squares to kind of like make up for faulty mistakes. This comes down to how good is your prep, how good is your board reading, and making the right choices, and possibly having, honestly, a lot of races happen between the 2 players here.
And me and you were talking in the intermission there,
yeah,
and we were saying we want to see NPT win this early game. And if he does, he's going to come out and he's going to be an absolute monster. If he wins this early game, he's going to get that boost of confidence. And I'm sure he's going to really push for a victory if he does end up getting this early game.
Yeah, I think it depends on the choices here. I do believe that Kata is going to be rushing paintings. That seems to be one of his favorite squares when it comes to the early game anyways. I've seen him go for that painting square quite often. My guess is, or what I would like to see is what Tom is going for in that case.
I know Tom's a big fan of Commander O'Neill. He's also a big fan of Millicent. Honestly, I think Tom over-evaluates the Millicent square a little bit. I see him go for it very, very, very consistently. A little bit earlier than I think he needs to, but I'm nitpicking. If I'm being honest, I am nitpicking a lot here. So Commander O'Neill being right next to Millicent, that wouldn't surprise me if Tom ended up going for that, on top of the fact that it is on the diagonal and it's on that row 5, which, based off of the squares that the players are marking, they're rating row 5 as the fastest line on the board.
And as we see here, a little bit of map time. Currently, both players being literally in the same spot. So for anyone that wants to see the map, here is map time, just for you guys. Yeah, but I do agree. I do understand the Millicent rush, if I'm being honest, because Millicent does drop, I believe, a golden rune like 3 and 9, so you get some extra money on top of getting the NPC invader kill. So doing that early does help out, especially if you already have a weapon choice that you need money for, or just, want that extra cash just to get more health onto your character. I just think overall it's not the worst early game or like rushable square choice for sure, but it can also be a little bit scary with the location that's at.
Yeah, I mean, the Rot Lake, there's definitely been some incidents. I've seen some incidents caused simply because it takes too long to get Millicent babooshed. Yeah. You just end up dying to the Rot, and that definitely can cause some issues. But this looks like a pivotal moment, both going first step, which seems to indicate Commander O'Neill. Neither of them going for the Limgrave painting, both running over to that Celia Crystal Tunnel teleporter, and we really get to see the SSD difference here, don't we?
Yeah, this is literally like a 2-second difference between both players, pretty much just neck and neck going for the same square. Now it comes down to, does Kata do the same strategy that Tom does of having O'Neill on the ground going for that baboosh cycle, or does he do the tree tactic, which is technically safer, but does take a little bit longer? I know Tom is definitely going to be doing the ground tactic. He was practicing that today before the matches even started.
I got to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that both of these guys opt for this strategy with the rats, where they run their horse up to the door, get off the horse slowly, and then open the door and then go through. The reason why is because that doesn't aggro the rats, but it's slower. And every time I've seen these guys choose anything, they always go for the faster option, even if it does involve a little bit more risk. So I got to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised to see both of them go for that strategy.
I think just to make sure that you don't take any, any health points at all from the rats. That way, you don't have to sit down at this grace. You can sit down at the Commander O'Neill grace instead if you really wanted to get rid of that, porting debuff where you can't port on the map. But
Kata doesn't sit.
Yeah, this is different. Not what I was expecting. This is going to be a nice helper check for them, too. They do already have the Bloodhound Fang, so the weapon check is not really something they're worth considering, to be fair. But Tom actually not even going for Commander O'Neill, possibly going for the paintings instead?
I think he's going for an efficiency play here. He's lighting this fire so that he can get access to the paintings a little bit faster. Okay, no, he's just lighting this fire for fun. Maybe to get back to Commander O'Neill a little bit later.
Yeah, it looks like he's going for paintings here. Okay, this is a great choice by Tom. Great choice, not committing to the O'Neill race and doing his own thing instead. I think that's a good move for Tom in this case, for sure. He's not getting the corner square, which is Commander O'Neill, which does suck, but he's not in any way being contested. And I think it's going to help for his mental, to be honest.
That's absolutely true. He perhaps could be considering after the interview that I had with him at the end of the semifinal. He could be considering, let's not opt into these early game races. If I win, Kata's not going to tilt. If I lose, I'm going to tilt. I don't want to win or lose based off of who wins this Commander O'Neill race.
Yeah.
I will definitely say, though, Commander O'Neill is the better square here compared to painting rewards.
100%. 100%. You get more money. You get a weapon check, which is not necessarily relevant here right now, but still a weapon check. And you get a corner square. It is just a very powerful thing to go for right now. And Kata, yeah, definitely going for that baboosh cycle here, which is the fastest option.
Yep, this is the slightly more dangerous, slightly faster strategy that I'm honestly not surprised to see it. Kata skipped the grace for the sake of getting a small advantage. Of course, he's going to go for this faster strategy, right?
Yeah.
The thing about bingo is early games, execution matters a whole lot.
Yep.
And so you see players make arguably unsafe moves a lot of the time in order to gain very small time advantages, not sitting at a grace, skipping a grace that might give them a little bit of an advantage later, not picking up items that could help them simply for the sake of going a little bit faster because they're rating that square that they're currently racing for. Like Catalyst is probably assuming that this is a Commander O'Neill race, and I think that's an absolutely reasonable call from him. And there's no reason to not go for this faster strategy here.
I do wonder, though, if you're looking at the active lines here. So for paintings, we're activating row 1 and column 4 here for Tom, which both aren't necessarily horrible. You do have the 4 different remembrances, which is definitely a very, very long game type of square. But besides that, the other stuff is not that bad to kind of commit to. For Cat in that case, the diagonal is terrible. You got Lanciacs, level 60, 4 different remembrances. That's a lot to deal with. However, row 5 also not looking too shabby either.
I should say, Kata has some Lanciacs tech, and I bet Tom probably has it as well. But Kata has some Lanciacs tech that makes it very fast and very safe. So if it gets to that point, I am sure we're going to see Kata be able to deal with Lanciacs just fine.
And we did see that pivot, by the way, from MPT, going for that painting and then seeing that Kata went for Commander O'Neill. So he's like, okay, I've got time now. This is exactly what we're talking about with this whole time thing, where it's like, okay, how can it be the most efficient? If someone claimed a square, I don't have to go for this right now. So I'm going to take my time with claiming that square, go for Dectus instead, prep late game already, and then go and grab my paintings.
Yeah, there's 2 ideas that Tom is trying to take advantage of here. One, he's trying to fill his time with something that's a little bit more efficient. Going to get this Dectus medallion while he's right next to it anyway. Probably going to claim other talismans that might be a little bit helpful along the way to the other Dectus medallion as he goes there. Things that aren't going to get you the square faster, but will be helpful a little bit later. But he's also trying to take advantage of this idea of maybe Kata's going to start to like the look of that painting reward square. It's a good early game square to go for. And so if Tom can make Kata go for that painting reward square as he's doing this other efficiency stuff, he can make Kata waste a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yep. No, I definitely agree. You know, trying to possibly bait him into a bit of a time loss here to give him a bit of an early game edge. That would be not a bad idea at all, but Kata not even going for it, going for Liurnia instead. I wonder what he's looking at exactly. He does see the 3 Watchdogs, which is an early game one, possibly going to go for those Crystal Darts again, just as like the last match did, and kind of already build some presence on column 5 here.
There is also Omen Killer, and knowing Kata, he might just be big braining. He's saying, Tom's going for painting rewards. That's the second best square on the board. How do I stop the threat? I go Omen Killer.
Yeah. Definitely not a bad option either. Tom having Radigan Sorcerer is definitely going to help him with already being able to wield his weapon a little bit sooner than Kata, so he might be able to start picking off some bosses in just a bit here, possibly giving him some extra momentum, and that'd be really, really nice for Tom's early game. A little bit of scary drop down there.
Yeah, that was scaring me there.
Yeah, I don't know if that was intentional parkour or if he just got lucky with that cliffside.
I don't think it was. He was about ready to quit out.
Yeah, this is going to be kind of interesting to see what Tom is going for. I think we kind of know what Kata is aiming for next. But Tom going for the Physic here, and then maybe going for the other deck to set Fort Height, just to cover everything. And then pursuing potentially Column 4. I mean, Column 4 doesn't look that bad, to be honest. You kind of have the Black Knife Assassin. If you go towards the Black Knife Assassin in Liurnia, you have Dragonkin on the way anyways for Ansel River. You could take that elevator if you really wanted to. It's a bit of a time sink. It's not the greatest, but it is still an option. There's a Grace nearby, so you could prep that Grace and come back to that later when you threaten that Column 4 if you really wanted to. Or maybe it's just looking for a good old scatter shot, go for random squares.
Yeah, I think he might be taking advantage of the fact that he has a little bit of forward progress on going for that physics. So trying to stop that row 5 threat, both of them raiding that line is very fast. Yeah. So he gets a bit of an advantage on developing that physic, which means he's probably ahead on finish off a boss with the explosive physics square, making that row 5 not be as threatening. Still a little bit concerning though, because it's not developing threats for him, which is the exact thing that caused Tom problems in the last game. However, if Tom can just manage to make this a true majority game, and he can do that scatter shot strategy like you mentioned, that just shuts down all of Kata's bingos without necessarily developing any of his own, he can definitely win a majority game. I mean, we've seen him compete on majority just fine. Yeah. The issue really arises when Kata plays positionally and gets 2, 3, 4 bingo threats online and forcing Tom to guess into something that's just unlikely to happen.
Yeah. I'm really curious here. It looks like Kata is going now for the Sombra 1 pickup here potentially, but also grabbing the Physic. So yeah, I think he's prepping. They're both kind of just rushing that explosive Physic square. I think you're right on that for sure.
There's also synergy with that Omen Killer boss. It's not uncommon to see the explosive Physic kill the Omen Killer boss because of how close those two bosses are. Yeah.
Very fair point. That would be very powerful here for Tom, to be honest. Getting that 2-for-1 deal, the explosive Physic on Omen Killer, that would create a lot of nice pressure here. Activating column 2 with those 2 squares being in the same line, but also then that row 1, that's going to be a lot of nice pressure from Tom if he does get to pull that off.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, I think Kata's going to have a little bit of a Liurnia lead here. I don't think Tom's going to make up this deficit that he's in going into Liurnia by the time that Kata ends up gathering the Physic. So I'm thinking both of these players might rate the explosive Physics square as it needs to get rushed a little bit more, and they might go for something like Bofa instead of going for the more synergistic play with Omen Killer, which I definitely don't think that would be a mistake for either of these players to make that call.
Yeah, there's that instant pivot after the Physic Flask from Kata, going straight back to the south gate here, and then making his way straight towards that Urtree avatar. So in this case, NPT is definitely a little bit behind. Going to be grabbing this Academy scroll. There is sorcery only on the board for remembrances, so just a little bit of a prep time there for him.
Yep. The thing is, Tom took this route over to Topes instead of doing the normal speedrunner skip. So that's actually a bit of a time loss. That's a 10-15 second time loss to pick up that scroll. Yeah. As opposed to just rushing directly for this explosive Physic idea. Now, maybe we see Kata go for this synergistic play, killing the Omen Killer with the explosive Physic, and that might open the door for Tom to go for explosive Physic onto Bofa or something like that. And obviously, explosive Physic is the stronger square here. It's relevant to that row 5, which is the stronger of the 2 lines. So if that does end up happening, I don't think Tom would be mad about that. But we'll obviously have to wait and see. Kata does currently have the lead on this idea.
Yeah. Yep. Which would really suck for Tom. Yeah, either way, if either of them pull off the double square combo, it's going to be a huge threat for either party in this case. It would be a better threat for for Tom. Although, I mean, I
Oh,
guess...
Tom's rushing Omen Killer. Oh, this is a very interesting call.
Okay. Potentially. I mean, they're both kind of in the same angle, so maybe he's riding past it. I don't know.
He could be, but I know that Tom is a big fan of this Omen Killer square. He thinks that it's underrated and not enough people go for it as fast as they should be.
Okay. That's fair.
And yeah, that's avoiding a snipe. However, Kata's doing the same thing. He's not going for the explosive physic first. He's going for the synergistic play, getting the Grace, then running to the Omen Killer. Oh, this is going to be bad news for whoever ends up losing this, although Kata is in the stronger position. He already made those synergistic plays to give himself a lead on that explosive physics square, and apparently knows a skip here. I've never seen this skip before, Domo. Have you?
I don't know what the hell I'm watching right now. This is some nice wall climbing.
Apparently, he's not very well practiced at it, but he gets it, and that puts him... Oh, this is close. This is close, Domo.
I am really... Yeah, they're currently technically in sync right now, both at the same Grace. But now is the question, are they both going to fight him? Kata's going to go for the fight. MPT sits down.
He needs to level. Oh, Melina, what are you doing? What are you doing, Melina?
He should have known. He should have known, but he doesn't know it's contested. That's the problem here.
Yeah, but he needed to sit. He needed to level. He didn't have the ability to wield the Bloodhound Fang.
Yep, and here Kata killing the dogs real quick so they don't get in the way.
Oh,
which you don't have
to
to
be a time
do.
save.
Yeah, you don't have to do that at all. You can just kukri the Omen Killer instead and bring him over to the hill. So that is a little bit of a time waste here from Kata. Let's see if NPT maybe has a better way of going about this fight. Kata getting smacked around and aggroed another dog here. This is not looking very good for Kata, actually. But NPT also killing the dogs. I'm a little
has
surprised.
all the dogs dead.
He's very low on health here, though. Has to heal. NPT has way more health.
We could definitely see an execution difference here.
Yep. Kata does have a little bit more damage off on his end. Ooh, Tom does get canceled off his air attack here and actually dies. Oh no, this is going to be devastating. There is a stagger here on Omen Killer for Kata on his side. Gets the blood proc on top of that. Gets the riposte. He's one L2 R2 away from a kill here. And there it is.
Oh, that's devastating for Tom.
That is an oofta and a half.
And he's already behind on the explosive physic, but I doubt he knows that.
Oh, wow. Yep, then Kata is going to be grabbing this Archery Avatar right now. And that's going to be 3-1 most likely here for Catalyst. Moving into
Kata taking a more efficient line, I guess. This is getting the deck dish medallion, I guess. Tom spent a little bit more time trying to bait Kata into going for those painting rewards, which I don't think that's a mistake, but it cost him on these other relevant squares, these other relevant early game squares, and it's obviously causing him a problem right now.
I really hope him picking up that Academy Scroll is going to be the make or break for that Remembrance Sorcery only, so he at least has something to kind of lean on for later. But that is definitely devastating. That potentially, honestly, if he didn't die, that Academy Scroll actually would have... That time they used for the Academy Scroll would have been enough for him to get Omen Killer first. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably would have. But we're definitely seeing how, because of the randomizer, early in these games, these players kind of have to get a feel for the weapon that they're using every game. And we saw Kata struggling. We saw Tom obviously struggling. Kata got it figured out. And so that's kind of the thing about the first fight in with these randomizer games. You got to figure out, okay, how fast are my attacks? Obviously, these players know that information already, but they don't have the feel for it quite yet. They have to spend a little bit of time reminding themselves how they're supposed to go about abusing different bosses' move sets given which weapon they have.
Yeah, 100%. And there is the Archery Avatar kill here for Kata. Going to be able to use that explosive physic probably on Bofa at this point because the Omen Killer is already dead. What a devastating play, though, I do have to say, though, for Tom in this case. Trying to deal with that.
I really hope we see Tom not tilt and we see him make a comeback, develop some counterplay, because we've seen him have a little bit of trouble with that in the past.
What I would like it to see from Tom is now, honestly, going for blocks. Go for as many blocks as you can. Get rid of column 2. Get rid of row 5. Just do a scatter shot. I think at this point, honestly, a scatter shot from Tom would be huge. Just get rid of everything. You already have possible 2 bingo lines staring you in your face. Just get rid of everything as much as you can, and don't really try to build your own bingo lines. Just try and get rid of everything that Kata's possibly going to be working on.
Yeah. I mean, scatter shot works. Ideally, you end up with countering your opponent's bingos while developing your own. Scatter shot is kind of the unga bunga way of going about it.
It is. It is, but most of the time it is a little bit faster, and it's definitely more reactive. But at the end, it is at least something that you can kind of lean on to kind of help you out with gaining at least some presence on the board, or at the very least creating some kind of defense, and then taking a step back after 3 or 4 blocks and be like, okay, I can kind of breathe for a moment. What can I do now? What exactly is on the board? What do I have for options? And then kind of go from there.
Yeah. Tough spot to be in for Tom, and I absolutely agree. Going for that scatter shot can absolutely be helpful, but I'm getting to be a big fan of this 3 wet blade square right here. That column 4 gets developed for Tom while simultaneously stopping the row 5. Tom doesn't seem to be going for it yet. He's just going for map presence, while meanwhile Catalyst is going for a watchdog. He's going for a watchdog to get a little bit of synergy, I believe.
Yep.
While also obviously getting that explosive physic, which bit of a, well, I guess it's not that ballsy of a call from Catalyst. Obviously, we know if Tom was contesting this, had he gone for Bofa, he might have won this. But Tom didn't end up contesting this, and Kata had no way of knowing just how close behind him Tom was.
Yep. I don't mind the wet blades play here at all, for sure. Oh, it looks like Tom is going to go for that explosive physic now after upgrading.
Yeah. Very uncharacteristic of Tom. We normally see him identify what his opponent is going for and either beat them to it or completely give up the square so as to not waste time. But uncharacteristic of Tom, we see him going for these races and then obviously losing them. We don't see that very often. But also just opting into being behind on these races.
I don't mind this play, though, because if you look at Road 2, we do have Erdtree avatars as their square on their own. So this is technically not too much of a time loss. Still kind of plays into that Road 2. And honestly, Road 2 as a whole doesn't look that bad. We have Watchdogs, and there's duo trio bosses. We can definitely use the crystal darts there and kind of maybe build some presence on Road 2. So, it's not the worst. Does he lose out on explosive physic? 100%. But it's not a huge time loss. At least he didn't quit out and reset the fight. We've definitely seen that quite a few times where players are like, oh, there it goes. There goes the main objective that I wanted, and then quit out without realizing that, hey, if you still killed Godric, for example, you still get capital access. If you still killed Godric, you still have a remembrance towards 4 different remembrances. You might lose out on the actual Godric square itself, but there are other things that kind of synergize with that square on top of that. So not always quitting out of the boss fight when you lose it is always worth it,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I missed that Erdtree avatar. Not nearly as devastating for Tom in this case.
Yeah, still sucks, but definitely not the worst. So
when I did speak with Tom before the game started, as well as Catalyst, I asked him what he thinks his advantage might be, and he told me he kind of has this underdog mentality, and honestly, I'm not sure it's actually turning out to be an advantage for him in this game. He said everyone expects him to lose, so he doesn't feel a whole lot of pressure to actually win. But I think that underdog mentality is kind of pressing him to go for the second best option on the board. Meanwhile, Kata is just claiming the best squares, and it's really working out in Kata's favor.
Yeah.
At least so far.
Yeah. Getting the other half of Dectus here for Tom. He'll have full Dectus, which I think is going to be very, very useful for him. He's going to have Altus priority. Honestly, maybe going for the Radon without summoning NPCs you mentioned before was Tom's favorite square to go for. Maybe that's an option here. Blocking that column 1, blocking that row 5, you know, possibly activating that diagonal with Altus, you know, having that Invade Magnus square on top of that, and Sacred Flask +7, which you also need Altus for. That might not be the worst move here. That's a proactive, reactive square.
Yeah, the thing about killing Radon is the underground area is sort of like an equivalent to Lane Dell. It's behind a whole lot of requirements, and if you can get a monopoly on that underground area, and hypothetically there's Valiant, Gargs, Fia's Champions, Mimic Tier consumables only on the board, that feels pretty damn good to go for. In this case, there's only Valiant Gargoyles, but nonetheless, you claim Radon without summoning NPCs, you kind of get a free bonus square to go along with it. You telegraph so much priority on Valiant Gargoyles, your opponent probably never goes for it.
Yeah. And you're also kind of like putting on some pressure as well, being like, hey, I've got Altus access. Do you have it? You know, that's also, I think, what a lot of players kind of realize is when someone has either Dectus Medallion on the board marked or then marks a square like Radon without someone's like, oh, snap, they've already been to Altus. I haven't even been there yet. Like, I've got to either get there myself ASAP or I've got to start creating pressure in Limgrave or Liurnia or Kaled to where I don't have to respond to that immediately. So we'll see how that plays out for him in this case too.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like Tom is going to develop Altus, which, as we've seen in the past, Altus has been a major game decider, and then to a lesser extent, Lane Dell and the underground areas beyond that. Looking at this diagonal starting in the bottom left and going to the top right, there is a whole lot of Altus on that line. And if we can see Tom actually develop a threat there, throw Kata off of his game plan a little bit, Tom maybe buys his way back into a majority game here.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for anyways. You know, hoping for a game 3. Hopefully making sure that Tom makes the right choices. But obviously, we see way more than what they see.
Absolutely.
Which is devastating, especially if you know, like, hey, dude, you wanna go over there real quick? You could save the game if you really wanted to. But obviously, you know, from a player's perspective, it's very, very tough to predict a lot of things. That's why it's so mentally draining. You know, it's because like you're reading the board constantly, and every single time a square is marked, everything changes. It's like basically it's like a math formula, but every single time a square is marked, you have to recalibrate and re-look at that whole formula. Be like, okay, well, what now can change? What now could possibly be a threat after that? You know, it's a very exhaustive sport, I guess. You know.
And that's before even accounting for the mind games.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think the player level at this point, myself included, is high enough to even have the square routing completely optimized, square selection completely optimized. But as soon as it is, the mind gaming that comes in when everyone knows that's the best thing to do, that's the second best thing to do, that's the third best thing to do. As soon as everyone knows that, the mind gaming becomes even more exhausting.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I'm really curious what Kata is going to go for here now. Currently in Limgrave yet again, possibly going for Kaled. And MPT is currently in Weeping. Possibly considering the Urtree avatar here.
That could definitely make sense. There's not a whole lot of Weeping synergy.
Yeah, not really.
I see Erdtrees. I guess Everjails to a lesser extent is kind of synergistic down here. There's a Watchdog Catacomb, but that's not an amazing catacomb to go for. Yeah, Weeping has, at the start of the season, Weeping was kind of considered by a lot of players to be a bit of a bait area. And around the middle of the season, I think we found that there's some board states in which weeping is very, very, very powerful. And that kind of brought it back into the meta. There was a while there, 4 or 5 weeks in a row, where people just weren't going to weeping ever. But there's definitely board states that exist in which weeping can be very strong. +7, Sacred Flask +7 is absolutely on this board, and that does make quite a bit of sense. Tom going for that block while developing that diagonal. Sacred Flask +7, very strong square.
A little bit of loading going on here, and Kata getting stomped in the face. By the tree.
Yeah, that's not buffering on Twitch's end. That's Kata's game, I think.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it wasn't me. I think. I hope.
I'm pretty sure.
I think Weeping here is definitely a great choice for the Sacred Flask tiers. But also the Tree and also Everjails. So, I mean, there's a little bit going on here to where it can really benefit Tom to be in Weeping. Kind of doing a scatter shot, which I was hoping for. And I think that's great that he's going for that.
While also developing that diagonal that we were speaking about with that Altus priority.
Yeah.
I think, and as I also mentioned in the last game, the thing about the diagonal bingos is it forces you to play positionally soundly. You put a new square on a different row and a different column every time. There's no other way to do it. That's what a diagonal is, which means you stop all of the other bingos simply by going for a diagonal bingo. Now, obviously, if you get the bingo, you win, but if you only get 4 of the squares, that stops out almost all of the bingos just by doing that, which it's the poor man's way of playing positionally soundly. It makes it very simple to figure out how to stop all of your opponent's bingo threats.
And this is honestly not bad at all. If he prioritizes Sacred Flasks over everything, then everything else is pretty much Altus. And you can easily go for Radon in this case, and then into Dragonkin right afterwards, with having that downstairs access. Instead of using the elevator, you can go straight through the Kron, if he wants to have that Grace for Valiant Gargoyles for later on. With that drop down.
And the thing about the Dragonkin Soldier Square, which you were mentioning a little bit earlier, obviously you can go for it early. You can go Nokron, you can go Ainsel, but the most efficient way to go for Dragonkin is after killing Radon, going through the Mimic tier, developing towards something like Valiant Gargoyles, and dropping down.
Yeah.
That's the most favored way for players to go for it. The problem is you can't always, since you can get access to it through Shifra or you can get access to it through Ainsel, it can be scary and sketchy to go for it in that way.
We are currently in Kaled here for Tom, so it looks like he might be considering going for that Radon summons only now. I don't think he's actually been to Altus yet, though. He does have full Dectus Elevator active, but I don't think he's actually gone to Altus yet.
I believe you're correct. We see Kata developing the Dectus Medallion, which could mean that Kata's going to go for the same idea that Tom's going for, and that could swing the balance back in Tom's favor a little bit. All else being equal, which it never is, but all else being equal, the person who wastes more time on squares that their opponents claims usually ends up winning. And Tom already with the Sacred Flask +7, I wasn't even keeping track. That's a very fast Sacred Flask +7.
That was very fast. I mean, you do get 3 tiers in Weeping on its own, but still, that was an extremely fast +7 here, blocking that column 2 and starting to possibly promote that diagonal. And he's going straight for that Grace here, I believe, at Redman Castle right afterwards. I think this is a great play from Tom, starting to build some momentum.
Tom, I think Tom found the best middle game idea here, and he's ahead of it. He's ahead of Kata on it, and we're seeing that painting reward square, which he sacrificed early on in the game for. Tom sacrificed quite a bit for that painting square. We saw it cost him Omen Killer. We saw it cost him Explosive Physic. However, it's paying. It's paying off right now. He has that early access to Altus, as well as obviously he made the smart play to go claim that Sacred Flask +7, shutting down the synergy that Kata claimed earlier with the column 2, all while building up this diagonal threat that you mentioned a little bit earlier.
Yeah. This is going to be, I think, a very interesting match, especially if Tom gets to claim that Radon without summon square. That's when this match is going to get very interesting.
Additional synergy, because getting to Castle Redmane is usually a pain in the ass. It sucks to get there unless you are able to get in there through the Festival of Radon and go kill Radon, obviously. That gives you access to the center of Castle Redmane without needing to go through that whole arduous path up into the castle in order to do something like fight the Crucible Knight and Misbegotten Warrior duo, or to claim the Fire Wet Blade that's in there. That can be very, very valuable for Tom here to get that Wet Blade. Very relevant square. Builds that column 4, stops that row 5.
And it looks like he's just going straight to Dectus here. Not grabbing that Wet Blade, sadly, this time around, but he can definitely get it after the Radon fight if he really wants to. I believe that's when the door opens after you kill Radon. So you can still actually grab that afterwards, if he remembers it. Otherwise, honestly, a lot of people go for that Wet Blade knife into Iron Wet Blade and the Illyria Wet Blade instead. Those seem to be the fastest, but if he does have that option, I really, really hope that he does go for that Red Hot Wet Blade.
Now, something we see Kata opting into pretty hard choices here. This is a chunky Putrid Avatar over in Dragon Barrel. Now, obviously, that's difficult to do. However, that builds towards RL60. I believe this boss drops 90,000 runes.
Yeah.
That is
89,000, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's a lot. I agree.
And that gives a huge advantage onto that center square, which, like I said, as soon as the board develops a little bit, the center square isn't always the most powerful, and it's certainly not very relevant right here. However, it could be relevant if board gets developed a little bit more. We see row 3, column 3, or some of the diagonals become a little bit more threatening. On top of also just being a square. Squares do tend to be good to claim.
And I mean, besides that, just having 90,000 to use for levels is amazing. Being able to stat boost yourself to where you can have a good amount of health, but also have a lot more damage and strength and dex for the Bloodhound, I think is going to be very, very useful here for Kata.
I would definitely agree. I believe I've seen some stat takers in your chat mentioning how many people have won or lost based off of who had more Vig. Yeah. And I believe it's very in favor of whoever ends up leveling more Vig ends up winning the game.
Yeah, I think it's Penultima Bread, I think, has like a full-on like spreadsheet of like different squares and their win ratio, which is really awesome to look at. So if anyone that has like the time to look at that, definitely check it out. Pretty much like different win ratios for different squares and also different stat lines. And it is very interesting to see like a bit of a pattern of what players are going for, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And that kind of data can definitely help optimize the meta a little bit quicker as well. I wonder if either of these players ended up referencing that to try to get a little bit of a better read on what truly ends up correlating towards wins better.
I think this helps Tom a bit, knowing that Kata definitely used a lot of his time for Erdtree avatars, that he's actually considering Everjails here. I'm not sure why he would consider Everjails. It is a bit of a dead square, to be honest, besides column 3. But even then, column 3 is kind of a gross line, if I'm being honest.
Something Tom did mention to me, which I don't believe is relevant here, but he did say when players are unable to find a weapon, he really likes this Darwill Bloodhound Knight check because it's guaranteed to drop you a Somber Curved Greatsword. In this case, it's the Magma Worm Scale Sword, which is not great, but nonetheless, that's the point. It can either drop you the Magma Worm Scale Sword, the Onyx Lord's Blade, or the
Morgoth's Curved Sword.
It can't do that. That's a Remembrance Weapon.
Ah, right. All right. Yeah.
It won't drop the Bloodhound's Fang because the way that the randomizer works, it's very, very unlikely for any vanilla item to end up in its vanilla location. So there's only 3 options that it will likely drop, and all of them are Sombers.
But even then, he already has Bloodhound. I guess that's why it's interesting they went for it.
I agree. That's why I say it's definitely not relevant here. But I did just want to bring up Darwill is something that Tom favors a little bit more for the sake of weapon checks.
That's fair. And here we go. Somber 5 now. Gonna be using that, I'm assuming, after Radon. Yep, goes straight for... What is he doing here, by the way? Do you know that? He's doing the jump into switching the right hand. Is that some kind of weird speed tech that I have never seen before?
I don't believe so. I think he's just pressing buttons.
Okay. I wasn't sure. It did look a little silly.
Oh, it's a method of jump buffering, according to chat. But normally you have to block to buffer your jump, make it so that you don't get the baby jumps. However, in Redmane Castle, you're unable to block. So apparently switching the weapons does that same function, just a little bit slower.
Weird. He did grab the blood grease resin recipe, by the way, but sadly doesn't have any blood grease on him. Or maybe... Oh. Never mind. No,
and that is one huge benefit of the Bloodhound's Fang.
Yep.
It's a somber weapon that does innate bleed that you can also put greases onto.
Which, yeah, it's huge. Actually huge.
And that's part of the reason why it's so favored for the any percent speedrun for most of the speedruns, I think, in Elden Ring.
Does get tagged here by the last swing, but should be all right as long as he hugs here and then goes for a double roll. There we go. Nice rolls. He's going to go into phase 1.5 here with Radon. Getting behind him. Oh, gets the stagger here before he gets the explosion. Oh, this is going to be really nice, actually, for Tom.
Yeah, I mean, Radon's going to jump up into the air right now, but yes,
I'm
not surprised to see that mainline bosses are going very well for these two speedrunners using Bloodhound Fang. This is probably the single most optimized bingo combat that we're going to get all season.
Yeah, I was honestly really hoping... I thought that when he staggered him before the shockwave actually happened that he would still do it, but that is a no. Well, he does get the shockwave afterwards in phase 2. That is huge. That is a free Radon right there.
Definitely a lucky move to get right there. However, Tom had already executed very well, was very close to killing him anyway. I'm sure he wouldn't have had much of an issue if he didn't get as lucky.
That is very, very nice here. And now Kata just getting to Altus, actually, and activating that Grace, seeing that Radon's already taken. I really, really wonder now if he sees that diagonal. He's going straight for Magnus here, I would assume.
Does he have the fingers?
Maybe he doesn't. Just grabs the Grace and ports back, kills Vare. You know, that could be an option.
Yep, you can source them from Vare. You can source them from one of the merchants in Altus, I believe.
The Fort Height merchant, too, has 5, I believe. The one right outside Fort Height, that merchant.
Yep.
And then the one on the bridge, are you talking about the Mount Gelmir one? Or the
No, I'm
one?
talking about the one at the bridge in the middle of Altus. I believe he has fingers. And you need those fingers to invade Magnus, otherwise you're not able to actually fight him. The thing is, if Kata has to route towards those fingers and Tom doesn't, that's a little bit slower. Going to the left of where Tom is right now and going using the Spirit Springs is a bit faster to get to Magnus. So if Tom already has access to those fingers and Kata doesn't, he could end up winning this race.
He is sitting down for levels, I believe. Or, no, he's going to Vare. He's going to go kill Vare here for the fingers instead.
Okay. I mean, we'll see which one of these ideas is better. Tom was a little bit behind.
Ooh, oh, that's a good amount of damage, though. There we go. Fingers already acquired. So this might be actually faster. Has 6 fingers now. Goes straight to EG to upgrade for the +5 Bloodhound into Magnus. So he's losing a little bit of time here, actually.
So Tom isn't rating this square as a race. He's probably thinking Kata doesn't even have access to Altus yet, but Kata's doing the same thing. Neither of these players are rushing towards this square.
Why is he sitting down again? He's leveling. Oh, my lord. And now I think Kata actually does have a bit of a head start.
Tom gets to take a slightly faster route here, but he's taking a while to level.
Yeah, I don't know why he's taking so long. Okay. Okay. Wait. Okay, so the drop down here. This shouldn't be too bad. Tom is going for that left side Spirit Spring instead.
Exactly. Tom gets to take the left route here, which is faster. It's faster than going to the bridge across the teleporter and then coming back the way that Kata went. So we'll see. We'll see. It does look like Kata's gonna get to the fight first.
Yep. Yeah, he's already right
but
next
Elden
to the
Ring
ruins.
PvP is Elden Ring PvP. And sometimes the NPCs just roll and you can't do anything about it, and it sucks. So we'll even though Kata does have a lead here, that doesn't necessarily mean he wins this square. This is definitely an area where the perfect, flawless execution of both of these players is not necessarily going to translate.
Oh, that Lance Claw was a little close there, but does get the roll off. That Lance Claw can almost one-shot you if you're not careful. I think he
Kata's
does.
having a very good fight so far. Getting the backstab, that's probably going to be it. Not quite. One thing about Tom's routing here, though, is, Kata?
Having a little bit of a hard time trying to get that last swing in. Does get it, though. There is that diagonal block. Very nice block here from Kata. And now he's got that progression on column 5.
True, very true. But one thing about Tom's routing here, since he did upgrade that 5, Magnus drops a 6.
Yep.
Which means Tom is going to have a damage advantage here. I'm not going to lie. It would have been better had he just not upgraded the weapon, but you know, it
is what it is. You don't know sometimes.
And it is a difficult call to say, I'm racing this square right now, this random square in the middle of the game. That's certainly not something that's easy to do.
This is definitely a smart move here, though, from Tom, going straight for Altus bosses. He's going to try and block that column 5 as soon as he can. And it looks like that Kata isn't even considering column 5 right now, or is looking at possibly doing Watchdogs.
Yeah, I mean, Kata already has a lot built up towards this column 5. And fortunately for Tom, I think he made the right guess here.
Kata
the one thing that Kata hasn't built up towards is Altus bosses.
Kata actually possibly pushing Road 2 here instead, going for Duo Trio bosses, going for Pumpkin Duo into Watchdog Duo.
But this is also Kaled bosses, though.
Yeah, so this is actually not a bad play at all.
And Tom is going to struggle to make counterplay out of this. Sure, he wins Altus bosses, shutting down row 5, but when Kata busts out this big row 2 threat, what does Tom do? How does Tom come up with his own threat or stop Kata's threats before they cause problems?
I guess
maybe
gargoyles.
we see him go for Lanciacs for Altus synergy, and then push that row 4. Tom is also having quite the incident here. He is struggling. He's struggling on this boss right now, and that is not good.
Sanjuin Noble.
Sanjuin.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Okay.
That's what it says. It says Sanjuin Noble. Can you not read Bushido's?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I can't read. All right, there he goes.
There he goes.
Call him Sanjuin Noble. He got so disrespected and appalled by the pronunciation of his name that he wasn't able to focus on killing Tom anymore.
Yeah, he was just dead. Yeah, there it is, though. The double Watchdog here from Kata. I think this is a good play from Kata. That progression for Kaled bosses, but also progression for Road 2 on top of that. This is a deadly 3-for-1 combo if you think about it. Getting all those 3 squares progress at the same time. Yeah. I don't know. This is tough.
That Magnus square was very pivotal We see yet again Kata identifying these positional threats and getting to them before Tom, allowing him to develop. We're about to be staring down the barrel of 2 bingos that just appeared out of nowhere.
And it looks like
column 5 and row 2 didn't exist until like a square ago. And now we're a couple squares away from Kata just absolutely dominating with 2 bingo threats.
Looks like that Tom potentially is going for a row 3 threat, going for Loretta here in Carrier Manor. Because he has progression right now on 6 bosses in Altus. Might as well just commit to that whole line. That blocks column 5 here. You know, it's not the end of the world, for sure. But is it worth it?
It does mean racing against the row 2 bingo, which Dragonkin Soldier, Valiant Gargoyles, that has some synergy. Maybe we see Tom make a play to win that Dragonkin Soldier square. As I did mention, it's a little bit awkward to go for that square. Do you waste time going for it early, or do you go for the more synergistic post-Radon idea?
Yeah. And there we go. There's that 2-for-1 deal here for Kata, getting Watchdogs and 5 bosses in Kaled. That is rough.
I think this might honestly be beneficial for Tom, though. The thing is, when you're down by this much, you know you don't have an option. Majority's out the window. You know, you're not thinking about that anymore. And it clarifies your ideas. You need to make a bingo threat to even think about getting back into this game. And that can really reduce the amount of options that you're considering and make it more clear what you should be going for.
And this is where you kind of want to know, like, which Altus bosses you can really prioritize here. Both of them going for that Gillica boss fight here, by the way. Then you got Tibia right next door that you can grab. Watchdogs you can grab right afterwards. You've got Godefroy right here. You've got Falling Star Beast up here with the Tree Sentinel duo. You got some close boss fights. You have the Knight's Cav here perusing around. You've got some really close options. So it depends on, like, what they are going for. That's going to dictate on who gets the square first. With Tom actually having a bit of a head start with that Sanjo and Noble.
Exactly. I'm honestly a bit surprised to see Kata doing this. I think Kata might be getting a little bit overconfident. He's up 7-3. He's up 1-0 in the set, and he's saying, all right, I just go for my first bingo threat, which I pretty much never see him do that, especially when he doesn't know he's ahead on it. So if Kata continues to press these Altus bosses, which of course he doesn't. But if he did, I would have been surprised.
I understand that he's just pivoting off of there. I mean, killing Gillica for that Ritual Sword Talisman is a 10% damage buff. So yeah, maybe he's not going for that square, but still having at least that talisman to help him out with the other fights. Not a bad idea. But looks like he might be going for Radon here now.
Yeah, that enables the Valiant Gargoyles into Dragonkin Soldier idea.
Yep.
Which we're looking at that row 2, and I mean, Tom, given the Kaled bosses and the Watchdogs, can probably guess that Kata already has that duo trio boss square pretty much unlocked. So I don't think this row 2 is going to surprise Tom, but he does need to respect it. He probably needs to win the Dragonkin Soldier square while building up his own row 3 threat.
Yeah, otherwise we're looking at potentially, you know, Kata using Valiant Gargoyles as his third duo trio boss, by the way, and then just into the Dragonkin right afterwards. That's a full-on bingo.
Yeah, so Tom needs to stop the threat all while building up his own. He's again in a very, very tough spot here. And we see Kata making these positional plays that are incredibly difficult to deal with. I don't know what's going on Tom's screen.
Yeah, I don't either. We've seen a lot of interesting parkour today, I feel like. Does make his way down, though.
I'm okay. This is probably a little bit of new tech, at least tech that I haven't seen, that enables him to get more Altus bosses quicker.
He got lost, and then he just ported. I think he was looking for the Stone Digger Troll tunnel that's also in Altus, but got lost.
That was... Oh, he probably doesn't have Stone Sword keys.
That sucks.
That does suck. Unfortunate for him.
Yeah, that is tough. And in this case here, Kata going for another upgrade, I think to +5, going straight for Radon now. And then, yeah, I think that Valiant Gargoyles into Dragonkin play for a Row 2 bingo is kind of looking like it may come to fruition, with Amputee putting a lot of time into Altus bosses, but he has to go for it. He's kind of forced because you don't know if Kata's actually committing to that or not.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Domo, if I had won my semifinal, what I was telling myself about Kata, my quote-unquote strategy against Kata, I said to myself, okay, I've seen Kata threaten 1, 2, 3 bingos and then just go for the third. And so I said to myself, all right, if I get to the finals, I'm simply going to ignore the first bingo that Kata threatens, and then try to do something more efficient in the meantime. That's obviously like a little bit of cope on my part, but I was desperately searching for any sort of advantage that I could derive from the way that Kata plays, because he's solid. He is a solid player. He's incredibly fast. His execution is literally the best, if not second best. And his square selection is impeccable. It's so difficult to find a way to actually stop Kata from doing what he's gonna do.
Yeah. Nice little stagger here from Tom, by the way, on the Worm Face. Does get the kill, and Kata now in the Radon fight. This is looking pretty tough here for Tom now. That Sacred Flask and Radon Square really put him up to a good position, but that Magnus Square really just diminishes fire so fast. Yeah, and yet again, we're seeing where if Tom isn't able to play to his game plan, it's difficult for him. He's not amazing at playing from behind, and we haven't seen that a whole lot. Tom's done a whole lot of winning. He hasn't done a whole lot of losing. So he's not the most well practiced at it, and at least so far, Kata is getting everything he wants, and Tom is getting nothing he wants. Mm-hmm. Magnus being super pivotal. If we look at the Magnus Square flipping here, all of a sudden Tom has the most relevant bingo threat on the board, and Kata is looking for what he can do. Dragonkin Soldier ends up being very relevant at that point. Both players probably end up rushing it. And level 60 on top of that. Yeah, if it really was just that Magnus Square being for Tom now, like Tom is as close to a bingo here pretty much is what we'll be looking at. And he doesn't have to waste any time on these Altus bosses, but instead we see him getting forced into these Altus bosses, which is a square that's simply not relevant. The row 3 is not going to do anything for Tom. Watch the caster curse come back and bite me on that one. Hey, we'll see. It's unlikely. It's unlikely that this row 3 ends up being relevant. And it's Tom's just forced into a bad position yet again because of Kata's incredible positional play. Yeah. Looking very interesting. And yet, Kata going straight to downstairs now, going for, I'm assuming, just Valiant Gargoyles and Dragonkin. Maybe Dragonkin first into the Valiant Gargoyles. Although I do feel like... I would think so. I think that makes more sense. Would it, though? Or would you rather actually go for Valiant Gargoyles first? That way you can get the double. And then also you activate your diagonal just in case it gets Dragonkin. Your other diagonal's already dead. You might as well get duo trio bosses and gargoyles first, and that way you can activate that other diagonal on top of that. The thing is, Tom's just rushing this Altus bosses square. And I'm not sure it's gonna end up becoming relevant. But yes, you're absolutely right. There's mind games to be played there. Dragonkin Soldier, Valiant Gargoyles, duo trio bosses. Like you can absolutely play mind games there. An interesting idea that I maybe would have liked to have seen out of Tom is, and actually maybe he is going for Altus duo trios. He went for the Crystallian duo. Is there other options? Other Altus duo trios that he could be developing towards, simultaneously blocking row 2 and column 5? Not that I could think of, to be honest.
The Miranda Flower and the Omen Killer are an option. From our perspective, we get all of the information. Maybe Tom says, Cat has already got duo trios, I don't care. I wouldn't blame him for thinking that. But from our perspective, it looks like that duo trio square might actually be the move. Now, the issue with that is that it doesn't develop any sort of threat for Tom. And Tom is still going to be staring down the barrel of a 5-9 game. That is a hard game to make a majority comeback on.
You also have, actually, I guess, the duo fight of the Misbegotten and Trisha. But that's a very out-of-the-way fight, you know.
Pre-Sentinel duo as well.
True.
But as we can see, Tom went for one duo boss while getting these Altus bosses, probably thinking it was a race, which, again, I can't blame him for thinking that. He doesn't have the information that we have.
Yep.
But again, just unfortunately for him, it's the wrong guess.
He has, honestly, what I would do right now if I were Tom, quit out, go for Demi-Human Chief duo, go for Pumpkinhead duo, go for like 2 just very, very fast fights, and like just try and take that away as soon as you can. But it looks like he's going for Lanciax here, actually.
I think he's going for this column 4 play, trying to develop counterplay, but we can see Cat is ahead. I believe what Tom is thinking right now is, okay, I guess that Cat is going for Altus bosses. I rush Altus bosses. I just sniped Cat on Altus bosses. Now I go to develop Lanciax, and then I go win Dragonkin Soldier, and I have a relevant bingo threat, and I've shut down all of his bingo threats. It's a very optimistic line of thinking, but that's the thing. Tom doesn't have a choice. He doesn't get to play in any other way. He's already losing, and if things don't go his way, he's not going to win. So he has to assume that things are going his way. And so, again, unfortunately, he's guessed wrong.
Yeah.
And it's unlikely that he manages to find a way to bring this back. But I can't say that he made a mistake in any of these last couple square selections.
Going for Black Knife Assassins here into potentially Lanciax. Yeah, it's not a bad play. It really, really isn't. But it's just unfortunate that we get to see both sides and actually see it potentially backfiring here.
Yeah. Black Knife Assassin. This is good synergy for that column 4. Like this is, if there wasn't other more pressing issues that we have the ability to see, obviously, this is an amazing play. But it's a little bit too little too late. Yeah.
Nice fight here, though. Getting to the Shifra Aqueduct here for Kata, going to be doing the Valiant Gargoyle fight. He does have a lot of health, so he should be fine. But you are using a Bloodhound Fang in that fight, which is not the best. You'd want a bonk weapon for gargoyles. So
I suppose there's a chance here that Tom gets row 3. I don't know how close he is on RL60, but he's actually very well prepped for all of those squares.
That is fair.
Like, hypothetically, if Tom was right there at RL60, he might have this row 3.
He might be able to bulldoze it, yeah.
I don't think he's that close yet. I'm not sure, though.
Not bad damage here from Kata, but also this is being a +6 Bloodhound Fang. It's not great either.
Yeah, and I mean, we could see an incident. Like, Valiant Gargoyles cause problems.
They do. They definitely do.
Especially with less than ideal setups like this. Now, I'm curious to see if Tom has the exact same tech as Kata does. It involves some very specific positioning where you get Lanciax to be very passive, and you sit on top of this rock ledge, and you pretty much just keep hitting her head, and she rarely does any attacks. It's relatively precise, but if you get it right, and I've seen Kata get it right several times, Lanciax dies very quickly. Unfortunately for Tom, Lanciax is trolling and standing up there continuing to breathe fire. Meanwhile, Kata is having a pretty easy go of the Valiant Gargoyles. So it's looking bad.
It's looking real bad.
Tom's getting this Lanciax here, and maybe killing Lanciax gets him the runes for RL60. We see a quick Loretta. We see a quick Godric Barefist only. He's already got one Black Knife dead. I mean, the row 3 is there. Can he get it fast enough? But on Kata's side, we're 2 fights away from bingo.
He is poisoned here, taking a lot of tick damage from that poison cloud from the one gargoyle. He has one more gargoyle left, has no healing. He's got to be able to do this while poisoned and not taking like pretty much any hits to make sure that he gets this fight.
Yeah, it's a close fight. It is coming down to the wire, and Tom maybe has this row 3 idea. Oh my God, the rare Lanciax stagger. Have you ever seen Lanciax get staggered?
No.
I don't think I have either.
That's pretty cool.
Although Tom maybe gets a little bit greedy. And this amazing Lanciax cheese, by the way, we weren't even paying attention to it. Do you see how quick this boss got melted?
Yeah.
This is one of the most annoying fights.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And that cheese just solves it.
Very, very nice. Does pivot straight to, I believe, Third Church here? Yeah, goes to the Third Church of America. I think he's going for Dragonkin. This could be huge.
Ooh.
This could be huge. Potentially.
He's behind.
He is behind.
Although Kata's about to get this.
I guess it depends on how Kata responds. Okay, he does get the gargoyle fight here.
Yeah, Tom pivots off. He knows that he's behind on Dragonkin. I'm surprised we didn't see Tom going for that earlier. I'm not gonna lie to you. It seems like Tom's idea was the column 4. It seems like he was never really looking at this row 3, or at least it was his secondary idea. So we see him pour it off, and then he says, "Oh wait, I need to get Dragonkin. It's my only way of winning."
That really sucks. Was on the way and then was like, never mind. Oh, that is devastating. Actually devastating.
Yeah. Tough spot to be in if you're Tom here. I mean, you hope that Kata has a Dragonkin incident. You obviously play it out. Is Kata gonna have a Dragonkin incident? Probably not.
Very, very unlikely, especially with that health bar, to be honest. The best case scenario would have been, honestly, that Kata does die to gargoyles, and then Amputee just gets Dragonkin. That would have been a huge pivotal moment, to be honest, because he already blocked that diagonal, and then it promotes his column 4, which he already killed one Black Knife Assassin, and then he just goes ahead and bulldozes Wet Blades. That would have been a bingo.
Yeah.
That is tough.
Again, though, it comes down to guessing. I can't say that going for this Lanciax idea was the wrong idea for Tom. It was one of a couple valid guesses, and he simply guessed wrong. And sometimes that's just how it goes, especially when you're dealing with someone like Catalyst that makes so many valid threats that you have to respect. You don't have any other option but to say, oh, Altus Bosses wins him the game. I need to get Altus Bosses, you know? And even though from our perspective, we knew that Altus Bosses square wasn't going to be relevant, at least for a while. Tom doesn't know that, and it's really, really difficult for him to make that call. Kata just makes so many positional threats that makes it damn near impossible to guess correctly what he's doing.
And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, our Bingo Brawlers Season 2 champion being Catalyst. Dude, yeah, he was hyped. Did you see his face, dude?
I did see it.
Very excited. I do. I love that. I absolutely love that. Congrats to him again, man. Dude, that is actually, that's massive. That is actually massive, dude. Congrats to him again, going with like a 7-1 record throughout the whole season. 6-1 in round robin, only lost a single time, and then wins both matches in the finals. Just what a great performance from Kata. I do have to say, like, he played fantastically.
And not just won them. He was dominant the entire time.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I understand these games had relatively close scores, especially the first one, but it was not close. It was not close. Kata had so much more relevant bingo threats that Tom had very slim margins of winning once we were in the mid games of both of these two final games.
Yeah. Honestly, just a beautiful performance from Kata. I do have to say, read the board correctly, made the right moves. Makes it like the understanding of like threatening column 5 here, by the way, and seeing 6 Altus bosses and be like, he has to block this, and I know this square takes a long time because you're not just killing one boss, you're killing 6 bosses. That does take a lot of time to do. And him be like, you know what, I'm just gonna let him do that. Let me go for road 2 instead. Go for that honestly very risky Valiant Gargoyles duo trio combo, because that is not easy to pull off. That duo trio square can be taken very, very quickly if you really wanted it to. And being able to pull that off is fantastic.
Had Tom guessed that he needed to go for Dragonkin Soldier before Lanciax, he probably would have won that race.
Yeah. That was that was a great game. I do have to say. We're moving into post-match here, by the way. Let's see if both players are ready for an interview or post-interview. Actually crazy, though. I do have to say.
Incredible play. The most optimized bingo play that we've seen the entire season. Kata completely dominant. And that's not to say that Tom's any sort of slouch.
Yeah.
Tom is amazing. He's incredible at this. But it illustrates that there is levels to this game, and Kata is the pinnacle.
Yeah. Yep. Our Season 1 champion being Gino Machino into Season 2 champion being Catalyst. I'll bring him in right now. He said he is ready. Welcome in, Kata, our Season 2 champion. How's it doing? How's it going? That was terrible.
Fine. I feel amazing because this is like over 2 months of work culminating in just really clean play in the finals. I'm just really proud, you know, because I put in a lot of time, bro. Like I'm in the gym, I'm doing reps, and then when I'm resting between sets, I was watching bingo on my phone. I was watching like people play at 1.5 speeds, just looking at what they do, learning the squares, and it's awesome. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, and you honestly really deserved it. You have done so much practice for matches and just studied, but also like you ended round robin with a 6-1 record. Like that showcases that you're really set up for winning the finals. You know, so congratulations to you on that for sure.
Thank you.
Now I do know that there's been this meme going around in your channel that you're the 6th to 7th best bingo player. Do you think that was a little bit of a chip on your shoulder throughout this entire season? Because obviously at this point it's clear you're number 1. It's not even close.
So this was very early in the season when this meme was born. I think it was like week 4 or something. And I mean, yeah, like for sure it was an extra motivator as well. If you look at the predictions on the website as well, now those were all casts, you know, before like I got into any practice matches. But like in every single match, I was the underdog. So being able to just overcome these odds, and basically the only person that stopped me in this competition was Radan in week 3 when I threw to him. So yeah, it was definitely extra bit of motivation for sure.
And winning the first match here in the best of 3s for the finals, was there anything going into the second match that you kind of like mentally prepped for? Did you feel good about your first match? You're like, okay, you know what, just keep up the momentum and then just going to game 2 that exact same way, or was there anything specific that you were kind of considering going into match 2?
That's a great question. No, honestly, I felt really like good before game 1, quite surprisingly. Like I think I was more nervous during the round robin matches than I was entering the finals. And I played really clean in game 1. Like there's nothing else that you can really ask for, right? I made good decisions. I didn't die. And so I was feeling good entering game 2. And I was thinking that I still need to be on alert though, because Tom did amazing in the semifinal. You know, he lost the first match as well. Bushi played amazing in the first game. And then Tom had an incredible mental comeback. So I was like, I'm really close, but I can't get cocky now. I just have to do my fucking best.
Yeah, For sure, for sure. And having that column 5, I'm assuming your thought process was, okay, I have column 5 here, but 6 bosses and Altus does take a long time. I'm gonna have Tom go ahead and waste his time on this while I go ahead for that road 2. Is that correct?
It's exactly correct. So he also had Radan. So my thought was, he at least has a +5 weapon, right? I assume we probably both started with BHF because it was the best starting class, I believe. And he didn't go for O'Neill because he got the paintings. So I was thinking that he has an extra upgrade at least. So he's probably gonna be able to race me to that. I did kill Gillica. You did see that?
Yeah.
And then I reconsidered. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do this, and I should try to set up that row too.
Very, very nice.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I was a little bit concerned, and in the commentary I said, I think Kata's getting a little bit cocky here. He should not be going for Altus Plateau bosses right here. This is not something that he would normally do, but you pivoted off. You made the play that I would expect you to make. And obviously it worked out well for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Gillica, fortunately, is a fast fight as well, right? So it gave me some time to think, basically, while I was running there. And yeah, I realized exactly what you said.
Were you ever concerned, though, that the duo trio bosses square would have ever been taken away from you? Because honestly, doing a combination of Valiant Gargoyles with duo trio is definitely a very risky play for how late Gargoyles is. Was that ever a concern that you're like, okay, you know what, if this is just taken, whatever, and just kind of roll with the punches, or what was your thought process there?
Yeah. So that was exactly my concern. In my feed, I said basically if I die to Gargoyles, I'm gonna have to go finish that square off really quickly with like Bog Duo Cave or the Crystallians in Altus, because I was exactly concerned about that, since I knew he had at least one duo boss because of the like the duo Crystallians and Altus are one of the fastest bosses there, and they're on the route. So I assumed that was dead for him already. So I was 100% concerned, 100%.
Gotcha. Well, it's still very well played. I'm going to bring MPT in here as well. We can talk about game 1 and game 2 together. Give me just a moment here. Welcome in, MPT. GG's to you, good sir. GG's. A great performance from you as well in the finals. How do you feel overall, man?
GG's. Yeah. Maybe I didn't play as well as I could have, but I feel like I don't know. Kata was just on something today. The Magnus play got me, and it kind of threw me off. And yeah, I don't know why I didn't go for the Dragonkin. I was kind of trying to build some kind of threat, maybe some kind of like sneaky bingo at the like column 4 or something, in like row 3. But I guess kind of just disregarded what he was doing with row 2, even though I knew it was like the threat he was going to go for. I just didn't go for the Dragonkin. I should have went for it. It was going to build my column 4 as well. In game 1, I don't know. There was just something weird about the way I was playing. I was dying to really dumb stuff. But yeah, I mean, I tried my best. I had a pretty hectic week this week, and I tried to practice as much as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was pretty much in like the best form I could have been for today. But maybe nerves got to me, maybe just uncertainty. I don't know.
Oh, you did great overall. I do think you made some really great choices. We really liked the whole Radon and the Sacred Flask picks. And developing that diagonal, I thought was a huge play for sure. Kinda shifted
I had
the board in your
to.
favor. Yeah, but even then, like, it's still, being able to get that diagonal activated, I think was huge. It was just
like
unfortunate.
What happened in
whole
most of the games,
Magnus.
it was essentially that Kata was creating the pressure, and I had to react.
Yeah.
Every time I had to react, I couldn't be proactive. I had to be reactive, and I was trying to get some kind of threat going. But every time I tried to get a threat, I guess he saw the threat already. It was just one-dimensional. It wasn't like a three-dimensional, like mind game threat. So it just wasn't. They weren't very threatening.
Now, you did mention to me that you thought that you were a little bit worried about racing Catalyst in the early game. do you think that caused you to select the second best idea on the board, or what you rated as the second best idea, and perhaps caused a little bit of early game problems for you, snowballing into these threats that Kata was making that you weren't quite able to make?
I didn't think the threats I was choosing were second best. Painting rewards I thought was faster or just as fast as O'Neal, but when I got to the Artist Shack, I think is when he got O'Neal, and I was just like, okay, well, that was really, really fast. And I was, I thought that I had the priority on Omen Killer, but I guess I had to do a little bit more setup, and Kata just essentially beelined it to Omen Killer. And in game one, I thought Magma Worm would be faster than Fallen Star Beast, but it wasn't. I chose to do the Bell Bearing Hunter cheese first. I guess I wasn't the play. I guess I should have done Magma Worm first into the tunnel. It might have been faster. And then like do the cheese afterward, after I get the 2 tunnels in the Magma Worm, because I'm pretty sure Magma Worm was faster than Fallen Star Beast, which would have given me the 2 tunnel square. But I did something else beforehand, and that's not what I should have done. So like, I think my threats were good. It's just I might have done a little extra in between to kind of set up for a threat, that like to set up to get the square, but it just didn't. It was too much time that I was putting into it.
I mean, overall, fantastic matches from both of you, though, I do have to say. Kata, is there anything that you maybe wanted to ask NPT that you had during those 2 matches that you wanted to know about? I don't know, any curiosities or anything from you, NPT, that you want to ask Kata?
Well, I mainly want to say huge GGs to Tom. You've been pushing me the entire season. Like, by the end, you were the only one who was able to clap me out of many matches that I've played. So I very much appreciate all the time you've put in, even though you had a rough week this week. And yeah, I was very glad to play this finals against you.
Yeah, thanks. I think this was the finals that should have happened, and you kind of just soared and exponentially grew in your strategies and your execution. And I felt like I was gonna be able to at least stop one game, but you were on form today. You're playing really well.
I mean, it's a big moment, right? Finals like this, it's the biggest match of the season. On another day, if it wasn't in a high pressure situation, the score could have been reversed. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I know that it's probably like disappointing right now, but you should feel really good. I think you did an amazing job the entire season, and yeah, like I said, I'm proud to have been playing against you in the finals. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I likewise.
Well, thank you much for both of you guys playing. I really, really do appreciate it. This is going to be the end of the season 2 here. Closing statements from either of you. You can shout out your channel if you like, anything that you're working on in the future. The MPT, go ahead, go first, then Kata, you're after that. Just whatever you'd like to say.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you, Captain Domo, for giving me the opportunity to play in this league. I was kind of fortunate enough that Gino decided that he was a little too busy this year or this season, and I managed
scared.
to he could have been scared, you never know. But he gave me the opportunity. You gave me the opportunity to play in this league, and it's meant the world to me, and it's had me make a lot of new friends. And I'm indebted to you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, for sure, no problem. I loved having you on the season, man. You did fantastic. It was really, really fun watching you play. And for anyone, shout outs to Nuclear Pasta Tom here in chat, by the way. For anyone that really enjoys hitless running or speed running and just good vibes, please go check out Tom here. Really enjoyed having him on the season. Kata, any closing words from you?
Yeah, so I have to second what Tom said. I'm super happy that I was invited to the league. Thank you so much for putting all of this together, Dom, because I've gotten to make new friends. I've gotten to have an absolute time of my life playing Elden Ring again, which, you know, I'm a speedrunner, but probably won't be for too long because that shit is depressing, dude. So this was so much more fun, and I'm really thankful for that. And a quick shout out also to all the competitors in the league. I think everybody took it very seriously. They put in a lot of time and they brought in their best selves, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And also, last but not least, everybody else that has also worked on strategies and helped all of us out, because I think we managed to really elevate Bingo in Season 2. I think we really managed to put the bar super high, and I think we're just getting started as well. I think what you've put together here with the randomizer and the bingo squares and everything, I think it's a really good concept, and yeah, I think this is just the beginning, dude. So I hope you keep it up, and thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I loved that you were able to step in last minute, by the way, too, Kata. I know you came in as like one of our last recruits, and still being able to, with only like 1 or 2 weeks of practice, then the season started right away. You did fantastic, and obviously you're the season champion. But just, you know, I appreciate the dedication from both of you and from anyone that has participated this season, and actually taking it as seriously as I hoped when Bingo first started the whole tournament of Bingo Brawlers. That it is like treated as like an actual esport, and you guys make that like a reality. And I just want to say I really appreciate that dedication to this whole event. And yeah, shout outs to Catalyst, please, in chat as well. Please go check out Kata. He does a lot of speed running, or he said he might in the future. I don't know. What are your future plans, Kata? If you're not going to be doing speed running?
Yeah, so there's like an all achievements run that I routed, so I want to finish a full run of that at least, because the route is done, and then we'll see. Challenge runs, some maybe no hit even. We'll see.
Very nice. And thanks to Bushy, by the way, for commentating with me today. It was very nice to have, you know, the insight of a player on commentary, which I thought was great. And I just had a good time, dude. So shout outs to Bushy as well in chat for him. And any closing statements from you, Bushy, about commentating the finals or just your season altogether?
Oh, this was incredibly fun, and I'm really glad that I was able to hopefully provide a little bit more perspective and more in-depth explanation of what the players are thinking, why they're thinking it, and hopefully setting a couple narratives straight. That was really my goal, and I hope I accomplished it all while providing a good show.
Yeah, you did fantastic. And with that being said, some claps in chat for Kata for being our Bingo Brawlers Season 2 champion. Congrats again, Kata. And with that being said, we are going to call it a day. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate that.
You mind if I say one more thing?
Yeah, go for it, man. Go for it.
I'm going to be donating half of my earnings to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And I'm also going to be working on a charity marathon. In the start of December is the Speed Souls Charity Marathon. So that's one thing that I like to do, is give back to the community.
Yeah, for Bingo Enjoyers, by the way, Bingo will also be there. So look forward to that. We will be part of the Speed Souls charity event, with NPT being there too. So it'll be really fun. But I appreciate that, NPT. Well, I'll work that out with you after this, with like how you want to disperse that. But
sure.
Yeah, appreciate that. With that being said, though, guys, have a good rest of your day, Cat and NPT, and hopefully we'll see you next season.
Hopefully, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
GG's,
great,
guys.
All right, GG's. All right, Bushy. That is the end of the day. A good old end of the work day, busting out, I don't know, a drink or something. I'll let you have the reins on this one. Where are we rating out today?
Oh, such a important decision.
I know. It is a loaded choice. I agree.
How am I even even supposed to do this?
Whoever you want. I give you the reins on this one.
All right. Well, while I'm deciding, I will say one thing, because I know Tom won't make this excuse for himself. He's not a full-time streamer. Everyone else that participated in this season, full-time video game player. Tom's a doctor. He's a cancer researcher. And he still managed to have more practice than 6 out of 7 competitors, and obviously make it to the finals. He's not going to make that excuse for himself, but he managed to be productive in his own life researching cancer, all while being the tippity top highest level bingo gamer and make it this far. So big shout out to him. Very, very impressive.
Definitely. Did I just make a choice?
Now, how about we we raid Napster F? How's that sound?
Sure. Yeah, we can go ahead and do that. How do I know who this is, but I don't remember how to spell it. Can you spell it for me?
NAPSTAR F.
Just F? There's no underscore or anything?
Nope.
Did I do that right? Yes, I did. Okay, I recognize that picture. Perfect. All right, yeah, we're going to go ahead and raid over to Napster, guys. Again, thank you so much, everyone that has joined in to Season 2 of Bingo. This is our last day for Bingo. But not my last stream, obviously. I still stream on this channel, doing a lot of challenge runs and Elden Ring runs. And tomorrow's my day off. I'm going to take a day off. You know, I hadn't have a Sunday or Saturday off to myself for 2 months. But Monday we will be continuing our Lies of P guard parry only run, so be sure to tune into that, and check out Bushy, please, too, and check out everyone else on the website. All of their channels are on the website itself, so you can click on their pictures and it takes you straight to their Twitch channel. Please go ahead and follow them. They all make great content. All of them have like a YouTube channel as well. And with that being said, potentially at Season 3, potentially, not confirming like I did last time, because I would like some rest. You know what? My brain wants some rest, just a little bit. All right. But thanks so much, guys. And hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday. If you do want to join the Discord, actually, we do have one of our viewers. He is doing an MMA fight that I will be watching. I bought the pay-per-view, so you guys want to watch that with us, you're more than welcome to join. That's it. Cool beans. Ta-ta, Bushy. Ta-ta. We're waiting. I can't see when we're rating out. I don't know when it's going out. Hold on. Okay. Now.
I see.
Now we're out.